Several dozen minutes ago. Taggy and Mikado stood at the end of the hallway right in front of a thick bulkhead. He checked for signals for control terminals that remained active, but apparently they'd all been destroyed by the HMI who'd previously infiltrated the underground facility. Saku and the others had visited recently as well, but since they returned to the surface, the facility was rather large. It was difficult to investigate in its entirety. They most likely planned to unravel the secrets of the Academy once the chaos above it subsided. The most important research conducted by the Academy happened below the spire that some workers and lecturers called the plant, and Taggy Mikado stood within its deepest depths. It was dozens of meters below the already deep underground space. It felt akin to a place of slumber, installed as far away from the surface as possible. After a long pause, Taggy opened his eyes. Then he looked at the information displayed on his personal data terminal. It revealed that the founder of the Academy had no longer walked among the living. He seemed resigned to a sad fate, yet drowned in ecstasy at the same time. He had nothing more to say about the death of his biological father.
第三権限者帝大義
第三権限者を確認。
プラントのロック解除を要請。
要請の事案は第一権限者帝黒船、第二権限者
第一第二権限者は死んだ。
第一権限者と第二権限者のロストを確認。特記事項8の6により全権限を第三権限者
ロックの解除を要請。When we are born, we create the count to this great stage of food.
Wait, is he using his halo?
コードを確認。
Oh.
1番から7番までのロックを順次解除。
The bulkhead slowly opened. There was a total of 7 walls, one of which each one was 1 meter thick. Not even a nuclear bomb could have pierced them all. A voice reached in from behind, seemingly out of thin air.
改造さんか。思ったよりも早かったね。
何をしておられる？
見ての通りさ。
プラント中枢の隔壁は黒船殿とあの女の許可がなければ開いてはならないはず。
父も夜店時野も死んでしまった。現在スクールの第一権限者は僕だ。
しまよわれたか。
ところで通路には彼女がいたはずだけど。
5人取られました。
そう、かわいそうに。
残る我々でもあなたを殺すのは造作もない。
それは残念だ。とても残念だ。もう少し早ければそうなっていたろうに。
Gosh, I'm so lost. What's going on here? The 7 bulkheads opened, making a heavy metallic sound all the while. The ordained incident had come to pass. The promised moment had arrived at long last. Beyond the fully opened bulkhead stood absolutely nothing. Considering the fact that it was the heart of such an advanced facility, the area appeared rather meager. It looked similarly to an oddly small hall. The 7 bulkheads had covered such a simple, tiny space. The next moment, everyone present gasped. One thing had inhabited the room, a strange object stuck to the wall at the far end. It resembled a white bagworm moth. However, it was no mere insect. Instead, it was a human who had been bound by a special straitjacket and hidden behind 7 extremely thick bulkheads.
おはよう。お目覚めのキスは必要かな。
Crack, the world itself creaked. What? What the frick was that? Hold up. I'm so lost. Like, what in the world is going on? I just want to see, like, where we're at. I'm like, how much more of the story is there? Like, what kind of plot twist is going on here? The academy had been turned on its head. The surviving students had gathered in the inner garden because most of the academy's main facilities were situated around it. With the AHM attack and the deaths of many lecturers and workers, it seemed like it would be a while before things winded down. The info layer technology that supported the academy had lowered too, and due to that, no one could use their devices or anything similar. Still, people did what they could. Some carried the injured to the gymnasium, some treated them, and some tried to help bring the situation under control. Sorko, Tamao, and Ero were among them. They eagerly awaited Saku and Narita's return, since they had no way to contact them. Suddenly, an explosion rocked their world. I returned to the inner garden with Saku and Hishi at my side. There I saw a group of students who had run out due to the explosion. They formed a tightly knit group that huddled together and gazed up at the northern sky. The explosion and raging flames burned brightly, releasing golden sparks. It seemed the research building was the source. The first explosion was followed by a number of others, likely caused by explosive material catching fire. Shockwaves that shook me to the core reached us. The first one had already shattered much of the glass on the school building, making it look like a structure in the middle of a battlefield. I parted the surviving students and searched for the other crowds. They weren't very hard to find. Toriko's golden hair reflected the light of the fire, making her stand out.
空子
成田くんどうしたの？今にも倒れそうでどこか怪我とかした？
Oh, you know, I tripped on a rock. Yeah, it hurts a little bit, but I'm okay.
大したことはないよ。説明は後でしよう。
無事じゃねえみたいだけど生きてやがったのか。落ちんじまったのかと思ってたぞ。
サク、どこも怪我とかありませんか？あなたたちこそ。それよりもこれは何事なの？それがよくわからないんだ。突然爆発が研究棟の方で。
Yeah, everything's going down the drain right now.
状況が状況だけに単なる事故ではないかもしれません。ご主人様、AHM の残党の悪あがきでは。
怪我をした者は体育館に集められているらしい。彼らについてやってくれないか。
ここは良いのですか、成田様。
私も策もいる。十分だ。成田真理のなすべきことはやり尽くした。せめて今宵の残りは一学生として。
承知しました。
Alright, Ishia. I trust you. Ishia bowed, then walked over to the gymnasium. Considering how things were going, the situation would calm down sooner rather than later. Plus, Ishia had appeared quite injured as well. It was better for her to get as much rest as possible. After all, she finally had an open path to a life without strife. Why are you still calling her that? Gosh, you have a good memory.
あそこはスクールで一番守りの固い場所なんだぜ。
諸君、少し静かに。
I stopped and strained my ears. Another explosion resounded. The shockwave from it shook the inner garden. The serpentine heads of the enormous flames that rose from the research building were akin to crimson dragons that licked the waning moon. Then something passed by right in front of the moon. The voices sounded distant. A dull sound that not only sounded comical but also didn't feel real reached my ears. The thing that fell sunk into the ground. It was a red flower, or at least that's what I believed, until a good few seconds later I noticed that its petals were actually human legs. A crushed human had landed right in front of us. Yeah, well that's gross. I heard more sounds of things cutting through there. Like before, human bodies rained down around us. They cut a mountain-like outline in the air as they fell, one after another. Everyone presently merely watched as the bodies piled up, as though bound and unable to speak. It was so beyond tolerable thresholds that most couldn't even scream. None of the bodies that fell were even in any sort of functional state. Some had crushed heads, some were missing arms or legs, and some were split vertically. They resembled insects torn apart by a mischievous child. None of them had died in the same way, and none of them had any life left in them. The pile of corpses completed in no time, and it instilled fear that rigged everyone of their voice and terror that defied all understanding. Everyone looked up, dumbfounded, as something descended from the heavens like the petal of a rose. Who the frick is this? Ruri? What the frick? Well, I told y'all I had an idea that she might still be alive. I said it earlier. Because they kept hinting at it. They're like, oh yeah, Ruri, yep, she's a character that's voiceable, and she just appeared, you know. She'd actually fallen at great speed, so it landed so gracefully that it seemed like a descent. Her long hair, which danced in the night, was akin to the dew of the heavens, and her white dress, which would fit any innocent maiden, seemed to have shined brighter than the moon itself. Gem-like eyes, flower-like lips. She was the epitome of form over function, a being who seemed like a masterpiece of nature. Anyone who saw her for the very first time would have assumed she was the antithesis to wickedness and a miracle that had blessed the earth. She spread her arms like angelic wings and landed on the mountain of corpses. Oh, I didn't mute her, did I? I did click on her earlier, remember? Yep.
そんなこともわからないのね。
I somehow muted her. She spoke with joy, singing a song of freedom, then spinning on the wretched, blood-stained stage. She made her dress flutter, and even that appeared impeccable.
お久しぶりね。なんて顔をしているの？まるでお化けにでも出会ったよ。そんな顔をしていると、きっとみんなに笑われてしまうわ。
How did this game get even more ridiculous? Like, I don't understand. Like, what kind of plot twist is this?
今夜はとてもいい気分。きっとお礼を言ってもいいと思うの。だって帝の血にはふさわしくない不良品。息をしているだけでとても目障り。鬱陶しくて仕方ない。
I had a feeling she was coming back. I had a feeling, but I don't know how I feel about this. I'm gonna be honest with you.
でも嬉しいわ。それなのに何もかも正気も血肉も魂さえも投げ打ってこんなところにまで来てくれたなんてありがとうお兄様。
Like, I was kind of hoping they would save something like this for, like, the true end, because I feel like that would be interesting. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're overwhelming me in this route. There's so much freaking crap going on. I should have known. Her very presence stripped me of not just my breath, but soul as well. She seemed that powerful. Everyone, including the crowns, found themselves unable to speak for a good while, but then they shook off that curse and stumbled forward. She was, without a doubt, Ruri Mikado. She was my little sister who definitely died on that night 7 years ago. The denial escaping, my lips rang weak, and I felt like I was on the edge of madness. My little sister stood before me. Not only did I recognize her, but something was even more profound and powerful than reason told me that she was indeed Ruri.
あらあらおかしいわ。お兄様だって死んで息を吹き返したくせに偽物のお兄様にできることがどうして本物の私にできないと思うの？
I truly had no words now. She had actually survived then. She returned from the land of the dead just like Shinri Narita. The thought didn't fill me with joy. I'd accepted that the real Ruri had appeared before me, but our reunion had no hints of affection or bliss. Yeah, because she's like killing a bunch of people and acting crazy. It was like, yeah, that wouldn't be a very good reunion. I recalled something I'd felt on that fateful night, a primal fear that had been imprinted onto mankind long before we became rulers of the planet. It told me that Shinri Narita would die along with everyone else present. After all, the creature before me was beyond all knowledge accumulated by man.
7年ぶりの再会を喜ばないのかい？帝春水。
Taggy, are you actually bad? Like, I've trusted you. I've had to build trust in you. I didn't like you at first, and I had to build trust in you. Oh my gosh, I'm still like, ah. Oh, and then Soriko's finding out where Shinsui is, isn't she? Ugh, everything's going down so quick. Taggy briefly glanced at Soriko, who remained behind me, still frozen in shock. I couldn't tell whether she was relieved that she was okay or pained that her final moments were so near. Gosh, this has got to be so overwhelming for her.
どういうことだ？どうしてお前がそこにルリと一緒にいる？
Taggy ignored the words I'd rung out and gazed up at Ruri.
いいわよ、タイに。お兄様に教えてあげて。だって面倒なんだもの。
すべて。
Taggy placed his hand on his chest, graciously bowed to her, and then looked at his childhood friends with a broad smile on his face. Felt like a vision straight out of a nightmare. A queen sat atop her throne of corpses with a grinning gesture directly next to her.
ルリが息を吹き返したというのはある意味正しくない。すべては彼女の意志だった。何を言っている？
真実をだよ、俊ちゃん。7年前、帝が終わってしまう前の日、僕は偶然父たちの企みを聞いてしまったんだ。父や桂木や花園や時の先生が帝の家を殺し尽くす相談をしているところをね。
I found his explanation hard to swallow.
バカな、知っていたのならどうして。
知らせなかったのか、かい？どう思う？僕は裏切ったと思うかい？父への家族の情愛に流されて親友だった君たちを裏切ってしまったと。
He spoke up with a hint of mockery in his voice, but his gentle smile was the very same one I'd seen on him all those years ago. It only made me more angry.
お前は裏切るはずのない男だ。なのになんだこのざまは。どんな死体があの夜に結びついた。
その通り、僕は裏切らなかった。僕は使い続けている。今も昔もただ一つのものに。
ふざけているのか。
7年前、僕は混乱した。錯乱したと言ってもいい。どうしたらいいかわからなかった。でも結局走り出した。帝の屋敷へ。僕にとって父は確かに父だったが、縁の薄い人だった。父も僕には他人行儀なところがあったよ。まあその分あの父にしては珍しく隙を見せたのだけれど、僕にとって一番大事なものは父でも玄馬の家でもなかった。だから走って最初に瑠璃と出会ったのはほんの偶然だ。あるいはそれをこそ残酷な神の作為と言うべきか。
Okay, so you ran into her, and then what?
二人だけの秘密にしましょう。
7 years ago, the girl had learned of a plot to kill her brother, mother, and every Mikado, even herself, yet she simply said that in response. She said those terrifying words with a pure angelic smile on her face. In Taggy Genma's mind, Ruri Mikado was a true gem. It was a budding emotion and affection too faint to be called love. Still, to him, she was the only thing that truly shined in that small mountain settlement.
その時、僕は初めて彼女の本当の姿を知って、
He fell in love with her.
嘘なものか。
Ruri was the perfect being, an entity that shined bright yet was unreachable due to inherent flaws in humans. Perhaps it was devilish love, but to Taggy Genma, it was a precious feeling he'd only experienced once in his life.
帝の先代、君の父上以外は誰も知らなかったろう。僕の父も気づいていなかった。帝の血というやつだよ。
なぜ己も殺されるのにどうして。
父たちに殺せるはずがない。先代さえしのいで、彼女は帝そのものだった。
なぜ帝を何もかも見捨てて。
While keeping himself from collapsing in despair, Shinri, Shunsui Mikado, spoke as though crying. The anger and resentment that had supported the Avenger through his harsh life had already run dry. None of it remained to stand at such an unexpected stage. He resembled a husk, unable to even stand properly. Taggy looked at his old friend with pity in his eyes.
そんなこともわからないのね。
The jester opened a path for the queen. Ruri Mikado gracefully walked down the pile of corpses like they were steps before a throne.
お前は何を言ってる。
簡単よ、お兄様。簡単。とても簡単なの。私はこう言っているの。私が帝を死ぬに任せた理由はね、邪魔だったから。
thing, his whole purpose just ruined. She smiled without a hint of malice, looking like a true angel. Shinri Narita meekly shook his head and backed away. He didn't want to hear anymore, but his beloved sister wasn't kind enough to respect his pitiful resistance.
私の願いはとてもちっぽけでとてもつまらないものなの。一つだけのお願いなのよ、お兄様。そう、自由。ありきたりでしょ。誰だって思うことだもの。私はただ好き勝手がしたかっただけ。好きなところへ行って好きに振る舞う。好きに殺して好きに踏みにじる。気が向いたら遊ぶ。飽きたら捨てる。全部私の思うまま。誰でも思うことよね。でもお父様はそんな私を縛ろうとしたの。ひどいわ、自分の娘なのに。どうしてそんなに冷たいんだろう。でも仕方ない。だって私は完全で他は全部が不完全。ただの偽物。本物にはなれないガラクタ細工。
Ruri approached Narita with a spring in each step. She danced with the same smile she had long ago, like a flower in the wind or a flickering star. I didn't wish to hear more of her story. My heart resisted, but I couldn't help but ask.
彼女は言った。私を愛しているのなら黙っていてと。愛しているのなら。はは、身震いがするほどおぞましいのに、その一言のためなら僕は魂まで差し出そう。
Taggy, I want you to know one thing. I have lost absolutely all respect I've had for you this whole entire game. I feel like there was a few moments where you were kind of a cool guy, and you know, you were like actually trying to help friends and do all this, and then you pull this crap. You know, you disgust me. If only I lost my mind in that moment, things would have been far simpler. Ruri Mikado, the genuine article, had not a shred of human affection. She was true perfection, not lacking on a single front, the end goal and the true ultimate product of the Mikado bloodline. In being perfect, she needed nothing. She didn't even have the function for love, for that sort of dependence was exclusive to those who were lacking. Taggy knew all well. Even if she had felt love, it was a kind a person gave to a pet or a precious specimen.
そして帝は滅んだ。死んだことでルリは自由になるはずだった。僕らにとっての誤算は、父が、黒船がルリの価値に気づいていたことさ。だからこそあの夜店時乃がやってきた。生き返ったルリを父と夜店時乃は閉じ込めた。ザ・プラントとして。
Huh.
あの頃の私はまだ弱くてちっぽけだった。だからこうして待っていたの。努力しながら頑張りながらいつか自由になれる日を夢見ていたのよ。
You know, guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. Let's take a second here. We've been going for a while now. We got a lot going on in this game, right? Don't really care for this plot twist. I think it's very out of left field. I'm not saying it wasn't unpredictable. Like, yeah, you couldn't have seen it coming. But it I don't know. It just seems weird to me. Like, what's her motivation for coming out here and killing a bunch of people? I'm assuming she has like some kind of like onslaught kind of thing, the devil descent, you know, and now she's going about doing this after, you know, having suffered for so long. But I don't know, I just can't say I like it. I feel like it's like not really what I wanted. You know, it's kind of like when you get something on Christmas Day and it's like you asked for something but you got something a little different. It's like, it's okay, but it wasn't what you asked for. Not sure what I was asking for, but I don't know. I just can't say that I'm like, oh, this is such a great plot twist, right? It's not. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't Ruri coming back in this way, you know. I would have been fine if Ruri came back and like she was actually still alive, but she was being like kept by Kurofune because he thought like she was going to be like really noble or something. And I don't know. If they would have done this in a different way, I would have liked it, but I'm not really liking it how they're doing it now because I have no idea where they're going with it either, and it's like in a bad
7
way.
年前の勝者は父たちだ。彼らにとっての誤算は2つ。俊ちゃん、君と僕だ。今君が聞いた話のどこに嘘がある？何もかもあの日に起きた本当の出来事だよ。
I knew better than anyone that Ruri and Taggy weren't lying, but I still tried my hardest to reject the truth. Ruri had hidden a devilish personality under that adorable smile. In my revenge strategy, I had been warped from the start. How could I possibly have accepted that? Overcome by panic rather than anger, I refused to listen to anything more and closed the gap between Taggy and I. My attack, full of burning rage, was deflected by none other than Ruri. My dear sister had appeared before Taggy, instantaneously making my fist reflexively stop.
どうしたの？お兄様。ルリを殺してしまわないの？
She looked at me with her lovely eyes and a smile that felt just as charming. It seemed to shatter the 7 long years I dedicated to revenge. My hand trembled. I failed to bring it down. She squinted as though pleased by my
と
reaction.
ても残念。遊べないのはつまらないわ。あの人たちはすぐに死んだの。ほんの少し潰してちぎってひしいで壊してねじって砕だからね。お兄様は頑張って。
She swung one of her slender arms, which was decorated by white frills. Her clenched fist appeared far from threatening, but it left a gale in its wake. Even the wind failed to match her speed, so mere humans had no hope of blocking it. I moved to guard myself, but she broke through that without any trouble, easily blasting me 10 odd meters away. I almost lost consciousness thrice, but that was far beyond mere power. Her attack seemed to spit on the faces of the laws of physics. It cracked my ribs and made my entire body scream. My body reacted faster than my mind, lowering the strength of her blow by jumping back. However, that did little. I'd barely avoided a miserable death as she pierced my entire body. I struggled to stand. A single attack made even standing a challenge. Barely supporting my upper body with my hands, I bled out of my lungs, looking like a sinner ready for punishment. Ruri approached me calmly, seemingly not in a rush at all. Then she spread her arms like a flower and spun like a dancing fairy.
なんて素敵。お兄様はまだ生きていて、まだまだ遊んでくれるのね。今夜は7年ぶりのお祭りだから、最後の命のひとしずくまで使い潰して、私の命を楽しませて。
Didn't like Saku say something very similar when she you know, went the devil descent in the last route? Like almost very similar. Death appeared imminent. I felt it more clearly than any despair I'd ever faced, but it wasn't because of the wounds from my battle with Kurofune either. I knew I had no chance against Ruri Mikado even at my best. Humans had no means to push back a storm or stop a tsunami. A battle with her was in the same vein. With a light, casual step, she covered the 10 odd meters between us. As my life came to an end, Yes, Soriko is finally going to be useful here. I'm so excited because she has an ability that could probably get us out of this. I heard a familiar voice as my consciousness faded, and as I felt Ruri's kick bear down on me, I jumped to the right without thinking. The angel missed me by a hair and silently landed in my previous location. I had avoided certain death, but it felt like a minor delay. I collapsed right on the spot and tried to crawl back up to my feet, only to have someone take a hold of my bloodied arm. Soriko?
あらあら、ソラコ、 うして直接会うのは本当に久しぶり。
Oh yeah, she did lose her halo,
でも
huh?
あなた、サクに消されたんじゃなかったかしら。
私たちは半分ずつなんだ。
Oh, I
消え
forgot.
たのは半分だけだ。
Yes, Hibiki, let's go. Though my hazy vision, I saw a girl kneeling before me. It was clearly Soroko, yet someone else entirely.
ああ、そういうこと。でも不思議。今のは当たるはずだったのに。それなら次は空子にしましょう。昔みたいにどうか。
The angel sung a death sentence, yet Soroko showed no intention of backing down, and she wasn't alone either. Let's freaking go, baby! Everyone's using their stuff! A group of girls stood before Ruri like a wall. They faced true perfection, utter devilishness, the pinnacle of hundreds of years of extinguished lives, yet it didn't seem to scare them at all. Saku Otonashi, Soroko Katsuragi, Tamao Akahito, Eru Takazaki. The four remaining crowns rose up to face her. The guardians of Tenkawa Noble Academy decided to make their last stand.
そこに転がってるやつとてめえが兄弟だかなんだか知らないけどよ。いい加減蚊帳の外ってのもムカつくぜ。人の島であんまでかい顔してんじゃね
俺の妹はこんなにイケてるゾンビ娘ですか。タイトルとしては超イケてないです。自分を思うにゾンビものもそろそろ消費され尽くしていますよね。
Thank you, Arrow.
成田くんはそこにいて、ここから先は僕たちのやるべきことだよ。何も心配いらない。彼女には
私たちはこのスクールを守る者。クラウンの名において帝ルリ、これ以上あなたの好きにはさせない。
The pale angel looked at them and sneered.
まあおかしい。好きにはさせない。止めてみせる。なんて素敵なんだろう。
Ruri and Mikado didn't even consider them a threat. To the ultimate being, others were but playthings. They weren't anywhere near powerful enough to put up a fight.
でもみんなひどいわ。私は最初の1で最後の1。この学園の一番深いところで悪い魔女に囚われていたお姫様なのに、どうして優しくしてくれないのかしら。
Dang, someone has a little bit of a god complex, quoting the Bible like that.
どっちが悪い魔女だっつ。
ルリちゃん、研究棟で何をしたの。まあ空子、どうしてそんなに怖い顔。少し遊んであげただけなのよ。だって囚われている間、注射されたり切り刻まれたりおかしな薬を飲まされたり、何度も何度もひどい思いをされてきたのだから、それぐらいは構わないでしょ。それにしてもだらしなかったわ。ほんの少しでみんなあのざま。
The mountain of corpses still loomed behind her. Taggy added to her words, playing the part of a perfect servant.
勘違いしないように言っておくんだが、彼女はオンスロートじゃない。見ての通りね。
So I misinterpreted your true nature too, Taggy. I didn't realize you were such a dick.
見ての通りなら魔女どころか完全無欠に化け物です。裏切り者のボンボンが何言ってんですかね。
You traitorous pampered prince.
彼女は完成品だ。オンスロートとはつまり不完全なんだ。ガンのようなものさ。本来の位置を受け入れられないから均衡が崩れ壊れていく。彼女は違う。あるべき姿、過剰でもなければ足りなくもない。彼女は生まれた時からこうなのさ。
そんなだって
シュンちゃんがルリや君、そして僕を知らなかったように、ソラコ、君もルリや僕らを知らなかった。
Saku glanced at me, her eyes filled with either lament or sadness. That alone informed me that she gathered her resolve. She didn't plan to hold back against Ruri Mikado.
ミカドルリ、それ以上一歩でも進むのなら。
Before she finished, Ruri walked forward.
進んだわよ。
Dang, you troll! The air shifted, and echoing songs spread the message of a possibility.
Sit. How beauteous mankind is. Brave new world.
Said
Okay, let's go.
and maidens call it love in idleness. Sit. If I profane with my unworthiest hand this holy shrine, the gentle fun is this. My lips, two blushing pilgrims, ready stand to smooth that rough touch with a tender kiss. Good pilgrim, you do wrong your hand too much, which mannerly devotion shows in this. For stains had hands that pilgrims' hands do touch, and palm to palm is holy palmer's kiss. Sit! The weight of this time we must obey. Speak what we feel, not what we ought to say. The oldest has spoken most, with that the young shall never see so much, nor live so long.
Type G Tempest 4.
Type A Midsummer Night's Dream 8.
Type ロミオ&ジュリエット3。Type King Lear 3。
But I don't know. Is older stuff enough? Because obviously she has a lot of abilities. Thus a deadly battle began. Tamao went first, rushing like a bullet. She was welcomed by the arms of the angel as she fell on her like a hammer. She ran at speeds above those she demonstrated at the Rose Garden, resembling a wolf melting into the night. And she wasn't simply fast, either. Tamao moved in a unique manner, switching up her speed to confuse the target and escaping their field of vision. Ruri swung her hand horizontally as if dismissing Tamao's crude techniques. Her fingers alone had the power to scatter humans like mud, but it meant little if she failed to land a hit.
身体機能の拡張はこっちのお箱だ化け物
Tamao slipped past the deadly wind that surrounded Ruri. Moving left to right, my sister soon lost sight of her, and her balance soon followed. It was an accident, however, a truly perfect being would never have slipped up. And Tamao didn't miss that invisible inevitability.
こいつでおしまいだ
Yeah, I don't think it was going to be that easy. Why had he clung to life? Shining Narita was akin to a corpse lacking the power to raise any of his limbs. As was natural, his consciousness fell long before his mind did. Ruri. His dear sister laughed at a face he didn't recognize. Why did he have to witness such an awful sight? Had he survived those countless battles of the past 7 years to arrive at this maddening joke of a play before him? The crowns fought to stop Ruri Mikado. But could humans truly stop a tsunami? Their actions felt reckless and absurd. He had to stop them, but he failed to even lift a finger. He would have been happy if he had died after his battle with Kurofune, but he remained among the living as a pathetic husk. He tried to avoid reality and escape to a more peaceful place, a fact that sickened him to his core. However, he still failed to muster a single bit of the will, anger, hatred, or any of the other emotions that often granted him the strength to move. The sight before him was his punishment. He'd assumed it would all end once he killed Kurofune, but he had made a fatal mistake. In fact, all the things he trampled on as his own, as he embraced madness, had become sins that weighed him down. In a way, that was a natural outcome. The fool who consigned his sanity to the crimson flames of hate deserved such a bitter finale. Tamao had landed a clean hit on the Pale Devil, yet she flew back as if time had rewound. Somehow Ruri had deflected Tamao's attack despite not being in a position or situation to do so. How she had done that remained a mystery, but it was nothing compared to what came next. The Pale Angel appeared behind Tamao. She had actually caught up to the one she kicked away, then kicked her again. Her kick contained the power of a rock fall. Tamao blocked it, but then that did little as she plummeted to the ground without any time to soften her landing. Ruri appeared from behind a cloud of dust. No one had any time to check on Tamao's condition because the angel approached the remaining 3 crowns with elegant steps.
あの程度で早いの遅いの言わないわよね。あなたたちはどんな玉乗り遊びを見せてくれるのかしら。
The pale arm of death reached for new prey, only to stop before Arrow, who stood right in front of her.
あら？何？
エルのハローはお前の愛に溶け込みます。愛を前にすれば誰であれ身動きも抵抗もできません。
I don't know if this will work. The creature stopped in place like a sculpture, then without any hesitation to speak of, Saku pierced Ruri with her left hand, the very same hand that saved Soriko, the judgment of a queen that turned superhumans into common folk. Yeah, that's not gonna work. Got caught before she managed to pull it out.
そんな動ける？あら嫌だ。ぬすっと竹々シートはこのことね。偽物のくせにまさか私とエルのハローの影響下だぞ。まともに動けるはずはない。
I didn't know exactly how Soriko and Arrow's halos paralyzed people, but Ruri appeared to be completely free of such
どう
bonds.
しようこの腕。ちぎってしまう？それとも引き抜く？潰そうか？それとも壊す？どれでもいいの。楽しめるなら。そうね。どうせなら自分で選んでみて。
どれもなしです。
エル、ルリは
化け物です。
She shot Saku down before she even finished her sentence. Somewhat aware of what Ruri planned to do next, Saku found herself unable to deny her words. Gosh, this ending is crazy. Gosh, that we just finally got for that one scene. So I'm guessing we have one and then maybe another one after that? Crazy. Taggy watched his former friend's final moments. Stripped of his desire for revenge, Narita became a hollow husk, rendered as powerless as he had been that night 7 years ago. He showed no signs of wanting to protect his dear sister or the woman he loved. He became a mere spectator, one among many in the audience. As the true queen's only brother, he would die last after all his friends. She planned to cherish him as much as possible before granting him the solace of
いっ
death.
そ何もかも手放して狂ってしまえば楽だろうに。
Despite losing sight of everything, Narita still clung to his
帝
sanity.
春水君は何一つ変わっていないんだね。
Well, at least this explains why he kills Kurofune in the other route. The bullet that struck her forehead flung Ruri's head back. Thanks to that, Saku broke free of her grip, and in her right hand she held a shining star she'd taken from Ruri's chest.
時の先生の遺品ですが、地下で拾っておいて超正解でした。
Made a super good choice.
備えあれば憂いなし。エル、さすがクラウン一の作詞。
Arrow held a handgun once owned by Tokino
自
Yomase.
分、サクほど優しくありませんので、成田の妹とか超関係なしで。ぶっちゃけ、サクに偉そうにしたやつはし。バカ、終わってね！
Smao's damaged body rose from beyond the settled dust. The angel who should have died chuckled, sounding like a chiming bell. Then she casually rubbed her forehead and faced the crowns once more, revealing that not even a scar remained.
間違いなく眉間に当たったのに。いくらハローだとしても脳を破壊されれば。
Ruri hadn't dodged or blocked it. Arrow had actually seen the bullet open a hole in her forehead and reach the brain. As impossible as it seemed, she removed the bullet from her brain. She had removed the bullet after her brain had been destroyed. However, there was something even more absurd.
ハローは切り離したはず。
Saku Otonashi didn't know the meaning of fear. She had faced even onslaught syndrome head on, but in that moment the bearer of a proud will shook in awe. And who could blame her? She faced a Reaper with the appearance of an innocent maiden. Saku's King Lear 3 separated halos from HMIs. No matter what power Ruri had, she shouldn't have been reduced to a mere human. I wouldn't be surprised if she has multiple. I feel like she's got either multiple or something else crazy going on. Ruri stood in place, appearing immobile, but then she slowly moved her legs forward as though she suddenly remembered she had a body. One leg up, then down, second leg up, then down. She didn't seem to be in a rush. Ruri looked like a girl taking a casual stroll through a park.
この周囲の傷は全部見て誘導してるんだぞ。エル、そっちはどうした？
動けるはずないです。声だって聞こえてるはずは。
Eru bit her lip hard. She concentrated so hard that it threatened to overwhelm her, yet Ruri showed no signs of slowing down.
何をしてもどうやっても偽物は壊れてしまう。
Ruri extended her hand again. However, unlike before, when it stopped right before Eru's eyes, it slowly but surely moved forward.
これがルリのハロー。
King Lear 1.
その作用はとても簡単だ。量がと時の先生は呼んでいたよ。
Taggy spoke with an expression that seemed both sad and ecstatic as he stood behind that throne of corpses.
彼女はどんなものも凌駕していく。痛みを、破壊を、死を少しずつ少しずつ。ルリをプラントにした父たちはさまざまな実験を施した。武器、薬物、病気、ハロー、すべてを彼女は凌駕した。彼女は一歩ずつ成長する。無限に凌駕していく。我々人類の歩みそのもののように。
I don't know, sounds like some more bullcrap to me. I mean, I think Saku's was some bullcrap, and now we're hearing about King Lear 1, which sounds like even more bullcrap.
だからサク、彼女を殺すなら最初の一撃で消し飛ばしておくべきだよ。いや、7年前ならともかく、今さらそれで死ぬかは怪しいが、まだ可能性はある。
Ruri Mikado grew with every passing hour, minute, and second, rising higher, growing stronger and faster, getting closer and closer to the realm of God. That was what it meant to be the apex predator. The crowns were more like clowns in her eyes. Wow, they really said that, huh? She was the true queen, the sole star in the sky, the Etola.
だからこういうことさ。もう君たちは彼女に勝てない。
Ruri's fingers finally reached Eru, but then a silhouette appeared behind her with no prior indication. It was Tamao. They had no chance. Tamao had reached that conclusion. Her experience and instincts told her how the battle would end. Challenging her meant unavoidable doom. Ruri Mikado may have looked like an angel, but she was a true monster. There wasn't even a 1 in a million chance of victory. The Akahitos were professional killers. Their role was to survive while killing the young and the old, men and women without discrimination. As such, she simply had to prioritize their survival above all else. However, she jumped not to run away, but to get behind Ruri. Utilizing old blind spots, she became a silent, speeding shadow. She didn't even know the reason why she leaped into action. What she did know was that she didn't want to leave Saku, Soroko, and Eru in danger. Even if no one in a million chance existed, there might have been a 1 in a billion chance, and that moment was her opportunity to find it. Eru Takazaki's halo assimilated with her target's love and used it to bind them. Even if Ruri exceeded that halo, which prevented even movement, it still captured her attention. The one thing the monster lacked was technique. She managed to blow away Narita with one hand and dismantle the researchers with raw and adulterated power. Being perfect, Ruri Mikado needed nothing more. Perfect beings required no lessons from others, for the power she had was more than enough. But the fact was, techniques existed to help the weak surpass the strong. Thus, Tamao used hers to take advantage of an opening that the strength alone couldn't have accounted for. When the angel got preoccupied with reaching for Eru, Tamao aimed at the line between the back of her neck and throat. If destroying the brain was enough, she simply had to remove her very head. She utilized the essence of the Akihida's hundreds of years of history to take advantage of the tiny window of opportunity that had appeared. The attack landed. Tamao's fingers reached Ruri's neck. However, in that moment, a single thought floated through Tamao's mind. Why am I so slow? The angel noticed her presence as soon as Tamao touched her. The very next moment, she casually turned around as though she'd forgotten something. Then the Pale Reaper simply walked by her, reversing their positions. Still in there, Tamao realized another thing. No concept or physical influence halo had been used. The woman was just extremely fast. She was so fast that everything seemed slow. When she moved, the world, Tamao included, appeared to freeze in place around her. Standing next to Tamao, Ruri gracefully gripped the edge of her skirt, gave a ladylike curtsy, and swung her right hand. Tamao had caught Ruri completely off guard, yet the angel blew her away so quickly that it seemed like some frames got skipped. A moment later, a shockwave resounded through the inner garden. Her movements had broken the speed of sound. Her speed outclassed everyone present. Taggy again claimed that Ruri exceeded everything. During training, humans overwhelmed their muscles in order for them to regenerate in a tougher form than before. Similarly, due to the burden Ruri had experienced over the past 7 years, her body had developed to the point where a mere swing of her arm broke the sound barrier. From that, I understood that by her standards, the power she exerted on Shinri Narita was akin to a gentle caress. She simply toyed with me. When she moved at full speed, Ruri could not be tracked by the human eye. How am I supposed to beat that?
今のは悪くなかったわ。手加減しておいたから、まさかこれで終わりなんてないわよね。
She's just been like accumulating power for all this time.
あなたが立たないなら、他のみんなをちぎってしまうわ。私はどちらでも構わないけれど、どうかしら。
Tamao raised her tattered body. She seemed ready to collapse at any moment, but she still stood up.
まあ、すごい。さすがはクラウン。拍手をしましょう。なんて素敵な道化たちだろう。偽物でもダンスだけはお上手よ。さあ、続きを踊って。
I'm still wondering what makes Ruri the real deal. Like, is it just because she's so powerful or because of what she's been through? I'm trying to figure out what makes her so much more than everybody else. Saku ate 5 pieces of candy at once in order to create something that did not exist, a yet unknown possibility. However, Ruri didn't rush to stop her. The monster who claimed to be the apex predator simply waited. Waiting in the world was, after all, simply an offering to her. Everything in the world was simply an offering to her. Okay. 3 scorching orbs of light appeared around Saku. She created the very same phenomena that instantly burned the AHM. And she released those spears of light without holding back at all. She lowered the number of orbs because they were so powerful that a single mistake could have turned the nearby town into a burning wasteland. Yeah, it probably will do nothing to Ruri. A power that could have even destroyed tanks split the buildings in the distance before disappearing into the dark night. However, the angel simply stood there as the ground got vaporized around her feet and white smoke rose up all around her.
今夜はお城で舞踏会。ネズミの御者はどこかしら。かぼちゃの馬車を見つけましょう。さあ、あの白いお城までひとまたに。今のはさすがにかわしたわ。当たっていたら万に一つがあったかも。
Oh, so she would have possibly died if it hit her. Well, that's good to know. She's not invincible. Her right hand had vanished without a trace, clearly because it had touched the spears of light. But then it regenerated instantaneously. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I hate stories like this because it just reminds me of Dragon Ball Z, where they just had these ridiculous fights and like they would just instantly regenerate one of their body parts. It's like you had to destroy them at the molecular level. it's a little much, okay? It's a little much.
ほらまた一歩私は階段を登っていく。ガラスの靴でお城の楽しい舞踏会まで。
Oh gosh. The many students who watched her dance under the moonlight found themselves unable to speak. And it wasn't just the fear of her power that rid them of their speech either. Their eyes were filled with an abject sense of despair. The crowns were the pinnacle of the Academy's HMIs, the light that they all strived for, and yet they'd failed to do anything against a single girl. Not only did they not harm her, but their reality-denying powers were also brushed aside like sandcastles. Thus, they couldn't even speak. They had been stripped of their confidence as superb beings, their pride as humanity's next stage of evolution, and trust in all the work they'd put in. Some powerlessly gazed up at the sky, some fell to their knees. As though fearing God, they prayed for mercy in the face of an approaching angel of death, and their prayers would definitely go unanswered.
さてそれでは。
Everyone didn't listen to Saku's command, not because the fear paralyzed her though, she simply wished to shield Saku until the very last moment. A truly meaningless act. One life had no hope of halting that things advance. Ruri stopped with her right hand still in the air, then tilted her head as if to dodge something invisible. Dang, Kagashi, are you actually trying to be a good guy? In fact, it likely was something invisible. The leader of Oruden had tried something, even though he trembled with primal fear overwhelmed by her presence, had stuck his right hand forward to attack her.
嬉しい。他にもまだ遊び相手がいてくれたのね。みんな怯えてすくみ上がって黙って潰されるしか能がないかと思っていたのよ。
Hey, I mean, Kagashi's a dick, but at least he's trying, okay? At least he's doing something, so you gotta respect that. My voice was powerless, so the word was barely a whisper. Still, a hint of energy appeared in my nearly expired body. Before I could even think, I gathered what little power I had left and crawled with my corpse-like limbs. I had to stop him before he died a meaningless death. He himself clearly knew his actions were futile. Superior numbers weren't enough to challenge a creature before him. Even if he risked his life to defeat her, it wouldn't have even counted as resistance, let alone a battle. This was the very definition of a futile act. All that was left was for him to die for her entertainment.
あなたは何をしてみせてくれるの？それとも怯えて逃げるので精一杯？
Hey, at least he's gonna die a man who tried to make up for it in the end. When Ruri approached him, her presence alone made him half scream, half sob. Dang. Like the sadness you hear in his voice as he's like choking up, like crying and like sobbing. Like, ooh, that hurts. Ruri swung her hand as if shooing away a fly and made his upper body vanish.
さあ、続きをしましょうか。
A second later, she turned around as if nothing had happened. And it truly did seem like nothing. He'd suffered a meaningless death and became a corpse to add to her cruel throne. Still, I dragged my dying body forward and stood before the sneering angel.
Narita! 下がって！それに、そんな体で今動いたら！
お兄様、どうしたの？あんなに泣き叫んでいたのに、苦しんでいたのに、嘆いていたのに。
Her smile is like nails on a chalkboard to me. It's so grating. Ugh, I hate it.
か、誰？
Dang. that's kind of huge for Narita that he's actually remembering who this guy is, because you know he doesn't remember guys.
お兄様、脇役の代わりはいくらでもいるわ。声を上げたから何になるの？どれもこれも無駄なこと。どんな舞台でも主役は一人よ。そう、本物がただ一人。この私だけ。
たとえ誰かに割り振られた役であろうと、鍵石義雄はそれにふさわしくあろうとした。
Yeah, and he remembered his full name too. Though his actions were meaningless, they weren't a waste. Because of the way he was, Saku, Ero, and Shinri Narita had survived.
人はそうあるのではなく、そうなるのだ。たとえ星として輝ける日が来なくとも、そうして生きた証は誰にも無駄とは言わせない。帝ルリ、この舞台の幕を引いてやる。
Dang. I don't know if this is the Narita we wanted the whole game, but this is the Narita we need. I'm so glad, like, once he's gotten his revenge out of the way, he's actually, like, so much better now. I'm so happy that he's, like, done this 180 on some of the things that he used to do. Like, remembering a guy's name, right? I said that without even a hint of hesitation in my voice.
幕を引く？つまり殺すと？私を？あんなに愛してくれた妹を7年間それだけを抱いてここまで来てくれたのに私を殺す？
I mean, I don't think he's wanting to kill you, but you were already like dead to him. Like, not in like a, oh, I hate you way, but he already thought of you as dead, so you being actually dead would not bother him.
それはそこの女のため？悲しいわ。血を分けた妹よりもよその女がいいなんて。
Gosh, Ruri, you're being so toxic right now.
成田真理は復讐者だ。誰かのために戦う輝かしい犠牲など私の手には余る。そんなものは必要ない。私が手にするのは怒りと憎しみと復讐の火だ。ルリ、お前は成田真理の学友を手にかけた。
Heck yes. He's getting mad. He's getting so mad.
帝ルリ、お前は今ようやく敵となった。故に殺す。復讐を果たす。
Oh my gosh, Narita. Oh, so good. I'd always sworn to stand on the stage of revenge, so I planned to see that oath through to the very end, even if my target ended up being Ruri. Shinri Narita was an avenger. With hatred in hand, I burned everything around me. Regrets, sadness, resignation. The time for those things would come after I died.
そんな体で何をするつもり？お兄様、今にも倒れてしまいそう。あとどれくらい持つのかしら。1分？2分？とても楽しみ。お兄様が最後にどんなダンスを見せてくださるのか。
お前に復讐を果たすまで持てばいい。1分あれば十分すぎる。
Oh, heck yes. He's confident too. Let's go. Indignation and fury resurfaced in my body, powering my shattered limbs. I lowered my stance and dashed forward, throwing a low horizontal kick. Ruri dodged it by jumping back as lightly as a feather.
逃げるのか。最後の一の名が泣くぞ。
Her strange reaction made me hesitate. Why did she run? She was perfection, thus didn't need to buy time or anything. Why did she expand the distance between us?
それは挑発のつもりかしら、お兄様。そう、そうなの。そんなに私を殺したいのね。
Ruri gracefully spun around and jumped to the top of her bloody throne with the elegance of a swan taking flight.
だから私もお兄様を楽しませてあげる。
My searing hatred and rage appeared to be little more than brief rain on a clear day as she spread her arms wide and sang with her angelic voice. Oh my gosh, of course she's doing it.
Boys, are we to the gods? They kill us for their sport. Type King Lear 1. Run!
Suddenly, unexpected screams rang out around us. Not one, but many. The scared students hiding behind us started writhing. They grabbed their heads, faces, stomachs, hearts as pain overwhelmed them. Their screams ended as quickly as they began, and the students started standing like marionettes pulled by strings. Of course. They were the very same students who screamed in pain mere moments ago, but their eyes were filled with bloodlust and other urges. They shined like those of maddened beasts, displaying not even a hint of their will. More and more of whatever they were stood up and surrounded the crowns like wraiths.
おい、どういうことだよ。こいつもあの女のハローなのかと。
Gosh, and I thought frickin' Saku's halo was broken. Smao dragged her limp body to the other crowns and stood to protect them. The number of raging man-beasts continued to grow, encircling those uninfected. New screams emerged. The wraiths started attacking the still sane students. They tore them apart, quickly killing them and starting a whole new pandemonium. I heard gunfire from the gymnasium. That was definitely the sound of Hishia's M11. The hellish scene reached even the injured.
Ruri, これはなんだ? 一体何をした?
Were Hishia and the injured students safe? Assuming Ruri caused that insanity, how had she done it?
ルリはプラントだと言ったろ?
Beyond the waves of people, Taggy stood next to Ruri's throne of corpses, gazing at me with cold eyes.
ここの学生の8割にあたる後天性型 HMI。さらにそのうちの6割から7割は素養のあるものをある薬で人工的に消化させたものでね。さて、ここで質問だ。父と時の先生はそんな薬を一体どこから手に入れたんだろうね。
They kept Ruri around not just as a model for the SSDs, but...
そう、ご明察。さすがはしゅんちゃん。
Okay.
その薬の大元はルリの血だ。
That's kind of where I thought they were going with that. Like, it was a part of her.
私のハローは凌駕なの。あらゆる変異を、あらゆる環境を凌駕する。たとえそれが血の一滴になったとしても。
So, as much as I absolutely, like, hate this plot twist, it does make sense. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's bad, I'm just saying I don't like it.
私の血は相手の中で死を凌駕して私になるための回路を作る。耐えられなければ死ぬ。完成した神経回路が素養のあるものを HMI に引きずり上げる。だから偽物。
Okay, okay, I see what where you're going with this.
全部偽物。本物は私一人。だからこうしてほんの少し干渉してやると。は
The army of wraiths gathered around Ruri's tall throne to act as shields. She looked like a true queen commanding many slaves.
後天性型 HMI の6割から7割って、それはまさか。
サク。
Oh no! Why did you have to do this, game? I hate you so much. I absolutely hate Ruri so much. Like, not... I don't know. Like, not just, like, as a character, but just everything about her. I absolutely hate this so much. Saku Otonashi led the Queen's army from the front.
悪い冗談やってる場合じゃねえだろ。
Just like the other HMI, Saku looked completely out of it. Overcome by something that felt akin to fear, I looked at Soraka, who stood behind me. She was the same type of HMI.
待てソラコ、飛び出すな。今は抑えろ。私と玉緒の後ろへ下がれ。
Ignoring our rage and sadness, the Wraiths took another step forward.
不審な HMI を虐殺したのも206号事件も HM を殺したのも全て。
嫌だわお兄様。可愛い妹になんてこと。それは全部そこの女の仕業なのに。嫌がる HMI を狙って一人残らず駆除したのに。
Yeah, but she wasn't aware she was doing it, first of all. And second of all, she would have never had the power to do it had you guys not given her part of your blood, okay? So, I'm not blaming Saku for this one. I remembered Saku's face, which appeared on the verge of tears. I remembered her proud back as she kept the tears at bay, fighting against the fear and the pain of the possibility of having blood on her hands. Ruri had trampled on that will of hers. My sister had controlled Saku's body and made her kill those she wished to protect. The emotion I felt in that moment was too grave to even be called hatred. Having become a puppet of the Queen, Saku raised her left hand and created 7 orbs of light, over twice as many as she'd used on Ruri. A surefire sign that none of her noble will remained, proof that humans stood no chance when faced with an incarnation of malice. So interesting, that's probably why she has King Lear then, because she got it from Ruri. A flash burned my vision. Spears of light split the school building and garden in half, cutting the forest and other structures apart all the while. A single attack half destroyed the academy's grounds. The all-powerful halo wielded by the crown-turned clown. Really, Gabe? Did you need to say it like that? Was that necessary? Oh, I'm sorry. That's just hilarious. Crown turned clown. That's great. That totally doesn't fit this situation at all. Why would they put that in there? Obliterated everything in its path. Shocked by the sudden change in Saku, arrows started moving, staggering towards her like a moth to a flame.
うかつに動くな。
何するんですか。有田、話して。
I wonder if she can do what she did in Eru's route and kind of like use her halo and like overwhelm her again with love. I don't know if that would work. Probably not, but I grabbed her from behind.
近づけば殺される。
Probably. Though not approaching surely had a similar outcome, it was only a matter of time. We stood no chance of escaping both Saku and Ruri, let alone winning. They rendered us powerless. It felt like we'd fallen directly into hell itself.
どけ。サクはなんとかなります。だから自分が行かないと。離せ。さもないと蹴りますよ。
Oh frick, I don't want to get kicked.
分かっているとも。だからこういう見せ場は。
Heck yes, Narita.
私に任せたまえ。
That's what I want to hear.
何するつもりだ。言っとくけど、サクにはハローで干渉できねえぞ。おまけに何一つも勝ち目はねえ。
What do you mean I got no chance? I got all the chance in the world.
だから
道は俺が何とかしている。だからエルとソラコ連れてとかこの場を逃げる。お前なら奥に一つぐらいは目もあるだろ。
But I mean, if we don't beat her here, when do we beat her? We don't, right?
何言ってるんだよ、玉緒ちゃん。サクはそれに玉緒ちゃんまで置いたまま逃げるなんて。
Exactly, Soroko.
そうです。バカなこと言ってんじゃねえです。サクはすぐに助けます。
普段から言い合ってる暇はねえ。サクとあの化け物だけじゃないんだ。あの数で押し込んでこられたらどうにもならねえよ。
それはだからってサクを置いていくなんて。
Tamao remained calm. She understood the situation perfectly. The puppets surrounded us. Beyond the wall, I saw Ruri looking down on us and sneering. We had truly entered the pits of hell. Even if by some miracle we saved Saku, none of us had the power to match Ruri, and even if we did, she had the means to overcome it the very next moment. Her power allowed her to exceed and surpass everything. Or anything. We were as powerless before her as humans before a storm. And so, Tamao had made the correct decision. The most reasonable thing to do if we didn't want to die a useless death was to gamble on survival.
それは配役が逆だ。
And yet, I rejected her logical offer.
この場には私が残る。生き延びる選択をするのなら、君が空子とエルを連れて行け。
Okay.
何鈍強なこと抜かしてやがる。こんなとこで無様に終わりたいのか。それこそサクを助けたいなら。
奴にだけは後ろを見せるわけにはいかない。
成田君。
I stood no chance and had next to no window of opportunity, yet Shinny Narita refused to back away from Ruri Mikado. And I hadn't made that decision because of some oddly human reason like settling the score for the past 7 years of suffering either. Revenge drove me, nothing more. Shinny Narita was an avenger, and so I planned to fight because I couldn't forgive Ruri Mikado for laughing at Yoshio Kagashi's life and trampling over Saku Otonashi's will. If he didn't struggle against this supreme entity who mocked humans, I no longer had the right to call myself Shinry Narita. There was no true justice in this world, and to live was to merely enforce one's will. However, I'd already resolved to walk down that bloody path, so I had to walk until the very moment my life ended.
蝶に一つ程度なら目もある。
Dang, the odds just keep getting worse.
だと
It used to be 1 in a billion.
そんなもんだって。
The puppets took another step forward toward us. Beyond them, I heard screams, shrieks, and gunfire. The tragedy continued to spread. Ruri didn't make them rush us, perhaps because she enjoyed the sight of us struggling. The tragic sight of our brethren, the cruel act of turning Saku into a puppet, the tears shed by Soroko and the others, all of those were mere offerings to her. If Ruri ever changed her mind, we had no way to last even a dozen seconds.
本来なら我々は策の一撃で消し飛んでいたはずだ。
Her attack had showed no restraint, and yet she had only destroyed the buildings. All the students remained completely unharmed.
楽しんでるだけだ。
I wonder if that means Saku has like a little bit of self-control still? One other thing I want to point out real quick is that Narita still has the Lapis Lazuli pendant of Ruri's, right? I think that has something to do with what's going to happen in the story. I'm not sure how that's going to fit in, but I'm curious how they're going to incorporate that, because I feel like that's not just like some low-key detail, right? I feel like that's got to play a part in this.
かもしれない。そうではないかもしれない。私はそうではない方にかけよう。
I wish to believe that Ruri had other reasons for not setting Saku on us, that Saku still had fought against her control. And so I decided to gamble on that absurdly small possibility.
成田君、まだサクはいるよ。
A resolute expression graced Soroko's face as she said that. She looked much like the girl I once knew, but also like someone else entirely.
だがもうすぐいなくなるだろう。
いなくなるってどういうことですか？
ルリーの制御に潰されちまうのか。
私のハローが見るのは他人の傷だ。策を押しつぶすのは自分自身。罪の重さだ。
多くの HMI を殺したと記憶を直視しているのか。では ルリから解放されたところでサクはあるいは正気ではないかもしれない。
The cruel truth of her sin threatened to break her beyond recovery.
そんなことはありません。サクは立ちます。成田のクソ妹なんかに絶対に負けません。
You know, I feel like he should be offended by that last line, but you know, with how the situation's going, I'll let it pass. Eru's senseless words bolstered our confidence. She believed in Saku even if there was no logical basis behind her statement.
見せ場は引き受けよう。
お兄様、相談はもうおしまい。花は散る様が一番美しいわ。雨に耐え、風をしのんだ花が嵐に根こそぎ持っていかれる。その無残にときめくでしょう。さあ、もっと踊って、もっと手を叩いて。この一夜の舞台のために足踏みをして声を上げて愛を語って、生命のすべてを使いつぶして最後の一瞬まで抗ってみせて。
そこで見ていろ、帝ルリ。お前の喜劇にすぐ幕を引いてやる。
成田君、どこへ？
I walked towards Saku without saying another word, then faced the army of wraiths in front of me. Every step I took was on a tightrope above death. If Saku's whims made her use her power again, I had no shot at survival. Still, I closed in on her. One step, then another, and I soon stood before her. She hadn't even used her light on me even once.
Otonashi Saku.
Heck yes, let's go. I placed power into my words, which made my pain surge through my brain. It felt like every single one of my brain cells had been pierced by a burning needle. The pain was so severe that I couldn't even scream. King Lear's 3 defensive mechanism had kicked in. The power traced a halo back to its source in order to destroy the user and strip them of their power. It activated automatically, and of course, Shin and Narita had no means to avoid its effects. My knees shook, rendering me on the verge of collapse. Death drew near. I'd survived it once, but that was the limit. Even if I made it through a repeat attempt, I would lose my mind. The fact that I still remained on my feet was a miracle. My consciousness hung by a thread. I used my broken arms to support my shaking legs and turned the intense pain into fuel, dismissing any thoughts to buckle under the pressure. I refused to let her be defiled any further. Even if I merely granted her a different kind of pain, I knew Saku Otonashi would face it head-on. Based on the feedback I received from my halo, I grew certain that I'd reached her, even though I shouldn't have. Thus, I knew it was worth gambling my life on.
Shit.
I had only one thing left to say, and I planned to dedicate all the time and life I had left to convey that message.
There are more things in
Oh wait, we haven't heard him do this before.
There are dreams of in your philosophy. Type Hamlet 12. Run!
Dang. Yeah, I don't think we've ever heard him say that before. The second defensive reaction fried my brain, taking my consciousness along with it.
リアを3の相手は無理か。
でもそうしたらサクはどうなるんですか？
I kept my fraying sanity in check through sheer tenacity, then punched my chest to force my heart to keep beating. I refused to let it end there. After all, Saku was still fighting. The fact that I remained alive proved that. I had to keep fighting so long as Saku still struggled. I finally got close enough to touch her. She stood there like a scarecrow while I used what little power I had left to embrace her. Even if she had been stripped of that shine that I loved so dearly, the one before me was none other than Saku Otonashi. I'd survived against King Lear III's defenses twice, so I didn't hope for a third miracle. Even if my body survived it, my mind wouldn't, but that was okay. I felt comfortable taking that risk. The weight of Saku's sins crushed her, which meant I had to carefully pick the words I most wanted her to hear. If I failed, our fates were sealed. Saku would end us all. Even if my life expired in that moment, I, Narita, refused to tolerate that single idea. Not when I made a promise to prevent that specific act.
あなたや空子やエルや玉緒やこの学園のみんなを
誓おう。その時はきっと私が君を。
I promised to stop her with my own two hands.
約束を果たそう。
Thus I said what I had
過
to.
酷な真実を前にしても恐れを超えて飛べ。
I spoke Tokuno Yomasei's final words. Saku covered her mouth with her hand, blood flowed through her fingers. Instead of responding, Saku simply wiped her lip with the back of her hand. It turned crimson due to the fresh blood. No expression lingered on her face, and she raised her hand without hesitation, aiming it directly at Ero, Soriko, and Tamao. No one budged an inch. Then Saku launched an attack behind her at Ruri. We caught a glimpse of the girl we knew all too well. Everyone present knew she wished to protect the academy more than anything else.
制御を振り切った
Ruri dodged even that surprise attack. Completely unharmed, she looked down at the meekly struggling masses and tilted her head like a songbird.
前なんかの好きに
Saku did her best to speak, spitting blood all the while, only to fall to her knees. The overwhelming presence before her cracked her will and pride alike.
よくもみんなを
She seemed to not have regained total control. Her right leg didn't listen to her. Giving up on it, she used her remaining limbs to stand up as blood escaped her mouth.
ほんのちょっぴり驚いたとても素晴らしい予想外の出来事なんてでもまだあなたの半分は私のものそれで次はどうするの何を見せてくれるそれにあなたは壊れかけ楽しかったでしょ偽物を潰すのはちぎるのは快感だった逃げるのを追いかけて踏み潰すのはとても良かった全部思い出したら立てないわよね何人殺したと思う20だったそれとも 30? 何も知らない顔でずっとあなたがやってきたこと
The angel's whispers, which were elaborate descriptions of Saku's sins, opened up the lid on her memories. Things she previously tried to ignore overflowed within her mind. She'd killed... Okay, I'm not gonna read all that, but you guys get the point. Saku almost collapsed on the spot. Kneeling weakly, she choked back her blood-laced sobs.
さあ、次はどんな芸を見せてくれるのかしら。玉乗りの次は火縄をくぐって見せてくれるの
The very next moment, Ruri started laughing right in front of her. The angel had descended from her throne and gazed at Saku's pained face like she was an interesting toy.
お前なんかの好きにさせるのか
Rage that made her see red washed away her despair. Her will, pride, soul, and everything she loved and held dear was being destroyed, and she couldn't forgive herself for being on her knees at such a time. She let her rage consume her and used what power she mustered. It required eating 5 pieces of candy at once. What once was, what was currently present, and what would be. All the possibilities she'd gathered, as well as those woven by her power, became a vibrant storm that assaulted Ruri.
出し物はその程度でおしまい？そんなことでは飽きてしまう。さあ、もっと素敵な歌を歌ってみせて。そうでなければ次は別の人をちぎってしまうわよ。
The angel's pale, slender arms easily scattered the storm. Then she casually brought down her arm. It was but a light swing, yet it contained enough power to utterly obliterate a person. Saku blocked it by killing its momentum. Eventually stopping the deadly arm using the power of a halo that, as Tokino claimed, stopped even nukes. The very next second, she doubted her sanity. The arm that had stopped began moving once more. It moved as if Saku's impenetrable defense didn't even exist. The monster before her exceeded every physical law of momentum. Saku barely managed to avoid getting hit because her defense had slowed it down. Saku Otonashi had always feared her power, since it allowed her to steal parts of fellow humans and make them hers. If her halos were truly manifestations of an HMI's psyche, then she was a wretched beast down to her core. Perhaps only hatred filled her heart. She found it simple to despise those who had taken from her, herself for not being able to catch up to her friends, and HMIs themselves for the future, the possibility they brought. It seemed plausible that Saku Otonashi, the insignia of the academy, had actually been born for the sole purpose of killing her fellow HMIs. She had always tried to do the right thing, but a shadow had loomed over her. She had always ignored certain doubts she had because she might have wanted to push back the truth. Oh, that was why. That was why the hell they inhabited was a result brought by her weakness. The power she had always doubted, but deep inside relied on, was a boon granted by the devil before her. She, the genuine article, only grew faster as she advanced. No matter what she tried, Saku never had a chance of closing the vast gap that had existed between them from the moment they were born. Being a fake, Saku Otonashi had no way to ever catch up to her. Even so. Even if it meant denying all that she was, she refused to let herself rot. Narita had fulfilled his promise at the cost of nearly sacrificing his life, so she had to keep fighting. She supported her collapsing knees with stubbornness and conviction, trying to rise to her feet once more. She failed, however, since she fought against an inevitability. That time, Saku collapsed to the ground, and when she did, she lost any desire to even try again. After all, her body, emotions, and soul had been defiled beyond repair. What could Saku Otonashi, the woman who'd killed so many of her brethren, ever hope to do? She wailed but didn't shed tears, for she had no right to.
さあさあ、次は何を見せてくれるの？今夜は素敵な月の夜。私を朝まで退屈させないで。
The one true Etola, Ruri, danced on the stage. She was the star amongst them. Everyone else was a mere bit player. The end result of that hellish tragedy had already been decided. Ruri was utter perfection. Countless people had spent endless hours crafting her, creating something for all others to strive for. I mean, I don't know who else is trying to strive for Ruri. I mean, she's just kind of a dick. Was that truly an HMI's natural state? I mean, I guess she's not just a dick. She's just pretty much evil, okay? I mean, I feel like calling her a dick is just kind of downplaying it. Like, she's just truly evil, okay? I don't know who's trying to match that. If their pain, sadness, and lives only served to create a monster like her, did they ever even have a meaning? Perhaps it had all been pointless. Saku started to give in to the monster as such melancholic feelings overwhelmed her, but... A silhouette stood before the devilish hand. The very same silhouette that had supported her many times thus far. Sometimes he urged her forward, sometimes he stood before her. She hadn't known him very long, but he had already given her so much.
なんて無様なお兄様。そんな壊れかけのおもちゃのような体で、そんなにアクセクと動いたら、それこそ心臓が止まってしまうわ。
好きに笑え、ルリー。お前が眠っていた7年を超えて、私はここまで来た。この程度で朽ちると思うか。
He knew better than anyone that he had no chance, yet he was the last to give up. Ruri was the manifestation of despair to him. He knew he couldn't face her, yet his knees supported him all the same.
だから
That was why she fell for him. She knew the answers all along, yet she found it somewhat amusing that it had taken her so long to admit it. She had to stand up. Both her heart and body were on the verge of shattering. However, she knew she had to stand, for he still struggled. Tamao placed herself between Ruri and Saku, and she wasn't alone either. As Saku struggled to stand, Sorako and Eru stood at her sides to shield her.
あらあら、逃げる算段をしていたんじゃないの？無駄と承知でそんなにやる気になってるなんて、一体何がどうしたのかしら。
俺はてめえと変わらねえろくでなしだが、まだクラウンなんだよ。サクが諦めてねえ。尻尾巻いて逃げ出せるか。てめえをぶちのめして、土地狂った連中を正気に戻して、何もかも片付け。
ルリちゃん、本当にもう一度会いたかった。
I know, it's like, this is really hard for Narita, and then obviously Taggy's known about her for a while, so that's why he doesn't really care, but, like, Sorako cares about Ruri too, like, they were pretty close, so I would imagine it's very hard for her to see her like this.
でも僕たちはクラウンだから、ルリちゃんを止めてみせる。
Heck yes, Sorako, that's what I want to hear.
とにかくてめえのやったことはバーシに値します。僕もサクを好きにしてくれましたね。借りは利息をつけて商売にして返しますよ。
そうなの。道家の意地なのね。笑ってしまう。本当になんておかしいんだろう。そんなものを山と積んでも空まで届くはずもないのに。地を這う者は星になれない。分かりきった道理さえわからないのね。
一つだけお前に尋ねよう。なぜだルリ？
なぜ？
なぜ策を使って多くの HMI を手にかけた？
なぜも何も。そうね。ただの雑興、暇つぶしみたいなもの。私はずっと囚われのお姫様だった。だから音なし策の手で、音なし策の足で笑いながら潰してちぎって投げ捨てただけ。ルリちゃん、君が強いて言うなら目障りだったからかしら。こいつも他のやつも全部偽物。所詮は私の劣化コピー。はあ、自分が何人もいるなんてそんな不気味には耐えられない。残らず潰してしまわないと。でもせっかくだから今夜は大勢で遊びましょう。さあいらしてお兄様。もしもお兄様たちが死んだらみんなで町に遊びに行くわ。
Taggy bowed in approval from next to the throne of corpses, playing the part of the great queen's loyal servant.
そして楽しい殺し合い。最後の一人になるまで誰も彼も夜通して殺し合って、ああ朝が来るまで続けましょう。なんて楽しい晴れ舞台。
She definitely planned to do all of that. Okushima was a simple playground in her mind. If she reached it, untold innocents would lose their lives. And it wouldn't end there. That would merely be the opening act. Thus far, Ruri had been locked away, first in the Mikado household, then deep in the academy by Kurofune and Tokuno-Yomase. She had been carefully sealed to keep her from connecting with the outside world. However, if left to her own devices, Ruri Mikado would exceed everything. As she interacted with the world, Ruri would exceed anything she encountered and evolve without limit. How much time did she require to surpass all achievements in human history and dominate the world? I honestly wondered how much time we'd had left. Power unmatched and limitless growth. She had no similarities to others and needed no one else. Ruri Mikado stood alone as the ultimate entity on planet Earth. That put her at odds with humanity, which spelled doom for the old world order. It wasn't the twilight or sunset Kurofune had predicted, instead an ending no one had ever imagined approached. Then again, if Ruri truly surpassed all that humans had created, then she herself was the pinnacle of mankind, the true future of the species even. So perhaps the Academy had been built both to observe HMIs and prevent such an outcome. Had they tried to act like that possibility didn't exist after they sealed her away? Or had they been looking for alternative futures? The only man who could have answered that question no longer remained among the living. I feel like that's kind of messed up. Like, Narita, like, hated Kurofune all this time and, like, wanted to get revenge, but he was probably the one man who was, like, trying to prevent, like, the end of the human species because of Ruri, who he kind of helped create a little bit. It's very conflicting, isn't it? I dragged my heavy body over to Saku. As she struggled to stand, I placed my hand on her shoulder and brought my face close to her ear. You are arguably the only person who can do that, so.
時の女子の講義を思い出せ。先ほど君ができなかったのは自分が何者かを知らなかったからだ。真実を恐れていたからだ。己を愛せない者に内なる神は答えてくれない。知るべきことを知り、過酷な真実と向き合った今ならば。
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Saku didn't do anything wrong. Like, it wasn't her in control. It wasn't her wanting that. I think Ruri just made her confused about whether that was actually her who wanted those things. Like, Ruri was trying to manipulate her in the sense like, oh, yeah, you loved it, right? Like, you loved killing people. But no, that was Ruri's influence over her that she didn't want. She really didn't have much control of. I don't know what's stronger, the power of love or the power of friendship. Hey, what the? What do you mean, Arrow? You're not gonna get in the way.
Tamao, Sorako, Sakuを守れ。
クラウンでもねえ部外者。 偉そうに上から目線で命令してんじゃねえよ。
I mean, you're not wrong, but hey, that doesn't matter right now.
サクを守れと。んなことはてめえに言われるまでもねえんだよ。
Tamao smiled boldly. Thanks to that, Narita knew what he had to do. Indeed, no one present required any orders. Even if it all ended the very next moment, they'd all found solace in the fact that they'd chosen to act according to their will.
この週末の舞台でも。 まだやるべきことが残されている。それはなんと幸せなことだろう。ならば最後の最後まで幕引きのその瞬間まで与えられた役を演じきってみせようではないか。
I mean, I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought he was done talking like multiple times and he was still going. I didn't mean to interrupt him. But what gentleman is he talking about? Like, Taggy's the only other one, and he's over there, like, on her side, so what do we care about him?
サクを僕たちに任せて成田君はどうするの？
なすべきことを最後まで成し遂げる。
I turned my back to the shining girls of determination in my heart. The Avenger faced his sister who awaited atop her throne of corpses.
覚悟を決めろ、帝瑠璃。成田真理が今からそこへ行く。
Students had become puppets barred my path. They didn't number 100, they were definitely over 50. They were puppets who had been stripped of their will, and after seeing Saku in action, we knew that they had no problem using halos.
いくら君でも無理だよ、シュンちゃん。
さあいらしてお兄様。私はここで待っているから。身を削って命を燃やして。
Even if Ruri Mikado had simply attained an HMI's natural form, Shinri Narita refused to tolerate her. I simply refused to tolerate the future she wished to bring about. Thus, I decided to face her, with revenge as my sole goal. I decided to rebel against the just, natural world.
どんな絶望の前であろうと、挑む前に無理だというのは大バカ者だ。洗礼尽くしてなお力及ばず敗れた時に。 やはり無理だったと笑うがいい。
Shinri Narita dashed up to the throne where Ruri and Taggy stood in wait.
来るよ、タマオちゃん。
んなことは見ればわかるって。
The puppet army rushed forward all at once, seemingly using Narita's words as a signal. They swarmed the crowns. The students controlled by Ruri not only outnumbered them, but they were all HMIs as well. Fending them off proved difficult, and considering the fact that they were being controlled, hurting them felt suboptimal.
あなたの力を貸して。
エルの全部はサクにもらいました。だから命をくれと言われても大丈夫です。
私の一番深くまで潜って確かめる。そして私の全部を取り戻す。私の記憶は欠けているの。多分ルリの制御下の時の記憶に自分で無意識に蓋をしている。
でもそれはその記憶は
自分が音無し作が一体どれだけの罪に汚れているのか。目をそらし続けてきた真実を何もかも取り戻さなくちゃ。私は私になれない。
While hiding under falsehood, covered in deceit and finding peace in that, she'd killed many innocents. Blaming Ruri for all of her actions felt like a poor excuse. She should have realized what was happening earlier. She had the means to figure it out and put an end to it, but Saku foolishly let herself be controlled and turn a blind eye to her harmful actions. That was just as sinful as committing the acts by her own will. Saku shot Eru a resolute glance, which made her nod.
はい、エルがやります。セート。メイデンスコーレート。ラブ・イン・アイドネス。
Eru accessed the deepest parts of Saku's mind. She used her love as a channel through which she arrived at Saku's hidden secrets. The abyss she reached into rested at the very core of all humans, within their instincts. Neither love nor any other emotion had any place there. Braving it was extreme recklessness. It was a danger not just to Eru, but Saku as well. As Saku drew closer to the hidden truths within her, a surge of memories rushed through her mind. She had to face all the memories and wounds from the times when Ruri had controlled her, but if she didn't do that, she would never truly know herself.
まだ諦めない。
He He faced Ruri despite the fact that it was a hopeless struggle. As she watched him, she realized something. To live was to enforce one's will. People struggled against hopeless odds not because they had a chance, but because they wished to stand up and express themselves, even if it was futile.
あいつに恥ずかしくないように絶対に逃げ出したりしない。エル、私に何が起きたら最後までやめないで。
大丈夫です。何が起きてもどんなことがあっても自分はやり遂げます。
Era had already prepared for the coming pressure and difficult trial, and so she decided to stop holding back.
Type Midsummer Night's Dream 8 Run!
Saku and Eru became as still as statues right when the puppet army reached them. Luckily, Tamao blew the puppets away like a gale dispersed from the dark clouds.
How beauteous mankind is to a new world.
見てたのおちゃん、ほとんどは成田君の方へ行く。
あっちを先に押しつぶす気か。あのお姫様、喧嘩売ってきたお兄ちゃまのことがよっぽど気に入らないらしいな。
Narita understood that. In fact, he wished to distract the army. Thanks to him, only a small amount of the puppets attacked the crowns, but even so, the odds of Tamao and Sorko holding them off until Saku and Eru returned seemed slim.
覚悟を決めろ。成田が力尽きたら、その瞬間一斉に押し寄せてくるぞ。
Soriko suddenly started acting entirely unlike the girl Tamao knew. Then she said something extremely obvious.
わかってるって。そん時はどうにもならねえ。お手上げだ。せいぜい笑ってごまかしてる。だけどその時までここは俺たち二人で守るぞ、ストラコ。タイプジ・テンペスト4ラン。
Soriko watched as Tamao became a gale and ran off. Then she gazed at the back of the man who had gotten hurt and collapsed many times, yet still refused to fall. Ooh, she's using his real name. He approached Ruri Mikado. The man continued to walk forward in order to defeat the one person he cherished above all others. Taggy, Soriko, and the siblings she thought were dead. She never expected all four of them to gather in one place again. Kind of a weird sentence. An impossible, miraculous reunion had occurred. She wished to tell him not to go, to stop fighting. She wished to tell him that even if it cost them all their lives. He had lost far too much, so she didn't want him to suffer anymore. And yet he advanced straight ahead like an arrow loosed from a fine bow, not looking back to the sides even once.
空子、どうするんだ。やるよ、最後まで。成田君が任せてくれたんだから。今の僕は何をする力もないけど、でも絶対逃げたりしないよ。バカだな、お前は。あいつ他の女になびいたんだぞ。いいんだ、僕一番じゃなくても平気だから。それにクラウンなんだから、ちゃんとこの学園とみんなのことを守らないと。それなら空子、手伝ってくれ。僕にはもうハローはないんだよ。私じゃ通じなかった。一人じゃダメなんだ。力を貸して。私たちはもともと一人だ。できないはずがないだろ。一緒にやろう。もう一度前みたいに。If I profane with my unworthiest hand this holy shrine, the gentle form is this. My lips to blushing pilgrims. Ready stand to smooth that rough touch with the tenderness. Good pilgrim, you do wrong your hand too much. Which mannerly devotion shows in this? For stains have hands that pilgrim's hand do touch, and palm to palm is holy palmer's kiss.
Thus, they unleashed a power that only worked when the two acted as one.
ロミオ&ジュリエット3ラン一緒にみんなを守ろう。サクたちが戻ってくるまでここは一歩も通さない。
I ran and ran. Narita made it that far solely because of his oath of vengeance, and so I planned to walk the path until the very end. It wasn't a matter of whether it was possible or not. I had no real chance, but backing away wasn't an option. I merely had to keep walking forward as the students blocking my path approached me like a wave. I swung my fist without hesitation, dispersing that manipulated puppets and cutting open a route. They felt no fear or pain, so that was my only means to stop them. That was Narita's role, the filthy job I refused to entrust to any of the crowns. The barricade of people seemed endless. The slight recovery I made quickly reversed. My arms nearly froze and I barely felt my legs. Fire, light, lightning, some powers I couldn't even see, the various possibilities forged by human will made my path even more difficult, yet I still persevered. I couldn't even feel if I had done any damage, and all the pain they inflicted on me seemed distant. Even so, I continued running forward. The Avenger's final target sat atop a throne of corpses. A life that was expiring had nothing to fear. I simply had to do what I had to do, so no misgivings weighed down on my mind. The few dozens of meters between us felt as long as a path to the end of the earth. Even if my next step didn't reach, my footsteps created a course for someone else to follow, and even if no one ever used them, I still had something left to do. I finally realized the true nature of humankind, so I had nothing to fear. I merely had to fulfill my oath. My knees nearly collapsed. Countless arms grabbed me, dragging me down and urging me to give up. I thought I wouldn't be able to move anymore, but then their grips loosened. Through my blood-stained vision, I saw the bulwark of puppets collapse a little. The surviving students had come to my rescue. Heck yeah, and Best Girl's here too, baby! That's how you know we're gonna accomplish what we're setting out to do. We're gonna defeat Ruri because Hishia's here. Okay, well maybe not, but I'd like to believe that. Some students had to become puppets and Hishia accompanied them. They were still powerless before Ruri and her army, but even so, they gathered their resolve and fought, much like Yoshio Kageshi did. Instead of cowering in terror, they acted on a will to move forward. I instinctively cracked a grin, which reminded me that joy too made people smile. Then I shook off and beat the puppets before me and moved towards the shattered stronghold. I drew close, very close. I rid myself of those binding me and kept moving forward, forward, forward.
お兄様、とうとう来たのね。
Before I knew it, Ruri stood before me. I'd parted the
まさ
wall.
か生きてここまでたどり着くなんて本当にすごい。素敵な瑠璃のお兄様。さあ、ご褒美をあげましょう。
At that point, I barely looked different from those compromising her throne. She chuckled as if truly amused, then swung her right hand down to deliver a blow I had no hope of evading. Not yet. It was too early to expire. I still hadn't done all that I had to do. Saku still hadn't returned, and my revenge still wasn't complete. Thus, Narita refused to fade there. The angelic hammer fell from above like death itself. I strained my consciousness in the brief moment before it hit, knowing full well that the very law of physics made it possible for me to block a supersonic attack. Then I scraped the bottom of my hollow frame for remnants of life, using them as fuel to move, to survive for even a moment longer in order to do what I had to do. From that moment to the next, then the one after that, no matter how brief their life, humans used it all to reach for the heavens. Thus, she missed. An utterly impossible miracle occurred. The flawless, ultimate being missed, even though that made absolutely no sense. Dang, he just sucker punched her. I shoved my broken right arm into her. The little life I had acted as fuel that drove it into the indestructible devil. Good, she freaking deserves it. The pale angel bent forward. My actions were poor mimicry, but even so, I made it look like I vanished from her vision. She was a being who exceeded everything, the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. Therefore, they had to be the very first time she felt shocked. If only for a moment, she actually lost sight of her enemy, a normal human. Genma techniques were created to kill maddened Mikados, but unfortunately I wasn't fast or powerful enough to use them properly, thus I had to trick the senses of that beast. That was the one sole thing I'd received from the man who'd taken everything from me. I'd stole it from Kurofune right before this hell began.
最初の1にして最後の1。完全無欠という到達点のお前が唯一持っていないものを教えてやろう。それは敗北だ。お前はこれまで一度として戦ったことはなかった。7年前も今もただ自分の力を振るい娯楽に消費しているだけだ。お前は完全すぎた。だからこそ得られなかった敗北を兄として最後に教えてやる。
I think there's some irony in him using Kurofune's techniques to beat her.
愚かなお兄様。
Ruri caught the right arm that hit her. She'd only held it lightly, but that alone made my bones creak as much as my muscles. She clearly didn't need to use much power to tear it off completely.
まったく私に当てるなんて正直とても驚いた。でもこんな拳でお兄様の力で帝ルリは殺せない。何もかも全部無駄なのにどうしてわからないのかしら。
I mean, yeah, it wasn't gonna be him just alone, but his Kurofune's technique is gonna help lead to your defeat. Hopefully, that's what I'm hoping. Ruri evolved with each passing moment. There would definitely come a time when she'd become an immortal, unmatched being fit for the heavenly throne.
人の命とは無意味ではあって無駄ではない。
無駄なのよ。すぐにお兄様で証明してあげる。
Cause like, Saku's getting ready to help him, right? Right? Oh frick, he's using his stuff.
この場
Okay.
に及んで何をするつもり？お兄様のハローで私を止められるはずがないのは。
There no seems in heaven and earth. Horatio, send dreams up in your philosophy.
なんて無様なお兄様。どこまでもどこまでも血肉を削って正気も魂も投げ打って無駄なことの繰り返し。散り際くらい鮮やかになさればいいの。
Type Hamlet 12. Wow.
The angel who feared nothing looked down on me, a haughty expression on her face. She sneered at Narita struggling. She grinned as she brought down the curtain.
さあ、道化芝居はもうおしまい。ほんの少しだけど驚かせてくれたお兄様も。
Before her power, which surpassed and exceeded all, no ability meant anything. Ruri stood proud in victory, but then, as though feeling something, she looked behind her. There she saw Saku Otonashi. Saku laid down Arrow, who having used up a lot of her power, slept with a satisfied smile on her face. The Exignia then gazed at the pale angel.
あらあらあら、どうして立っちゃうの？辛くて悲しくて仕方ないのに、そんなに私のことを消してしまいたいの？
お前は私たちのあるべき形だ。
そうよ。あるべき形。私は本物だもの。
Yes, but we learned that fakes can be just as good as the originals in Eru's route, right?
己のために他の全てを食いつぶす、世界を滅ぼしながら生き続ける私たちそのものだ。それでも私たちは行く。
偽物がどこへ行くというの？あなたたちはただのガラクタ細工。私が消費してあげる。
羽があれば飛ぶ、傷ついても進む、足があれば歩く、なければ這ってでも。それが私たち。血を吐きながら歩き続ける者、あまたの罪を犯しながら夢を見続ける者、輝ける者を信じて荒野をさまよう者だ。私たちはお前なんかには屈さない。そして
One day surely,
この黄昏を
the pallid angel didn't make her turn away. Saku simply faced countless wounds and pains head on.
セット。
Okay. Saku Otonashi sang a song that seemed to echo from the surface of the earth to the far heavens.
The weight of this time we must obey. Speak what we feel, not what we ought to say.
Oh, Ruri's panicking. Ruri Mikado truly was the apex predator in the world. She instinctually, not by reason, saw a glimpse of the near future. It told her that she couldn't afford to let Saku Otonashi live. If she did, it would mean her defeat.
そんなことがあるものですか？
Ruri roared and jumped. In that moment, she chose to trust her instincts over even her emotion. She was fast enough to break the sound barrier, so covering the few dozen meters between them was a simple task. Ruri didn't even have to raise her fist. Crashing into her was more than enough. That alone would scatter Saku Otonashi into bits of gore. Or at least, that's what would have happened if she'd actually dashed. Ruri Mikado remained as petrified as a bird with its wings clipped. At the very last moment, her right leg froze in place. Hold up, what is going on here? Oh, so his thing actually got through, huh?
お兄様。
お前とサクたちが戦ったあの一幕が教えてくれた。帝瑠璃は全てを凌駕するが、それは超越ではない。
Ruri could only exceed something she'd already experienced. The first attack always went through, which is why my Hamlet 12 pushed her to her end.
そして知れ、これが敗北だ。
The oldest has born most. We that are young shall never see so much, nor live so long. Tide King Lear 3. Run!
Okay, I'm excited. Flowers bloomed, a white garden spread out to the horizon. Thousands, millions, no, countless white flowers bloomed. I watched those flowers sprout and mature in moments, like seasons passed in mere seconds. When Ruri felt fear for the very first time, she screamed and embraced herself. As she clung to her own body, it scattered through her fingers, becoming countless flower petals.
これは何？どうして治らない、止まらない。これは何？いや、こんなのは嫌。何かが消えていく。いやいやいや。
You know, you almost feel bad for her, but I don't.
こんなことありえない。あいつの力を凌駕したはず。
それがお前の過ちだ、ルリ。
You know, I talked about having confidence earlier. You know, like there's this thin line between being a little bit too cocky and being just confident. You know, she far exceeded that line, just like she's far exceeded everything else. She's a little too confident. She trembled before the very first terrifying mystery in her life, making an expression that seemed full of anger.
お前はサクの制御を奪っていた。記憶も見ていた。だからサクの力をハローを奪うものだと錯覚した。彼女自身がそう信じていたよ。
何をそれごとを。
ハローとは肉体と精神が作り出すあり方の形。
Is he like trying to say like, oh, well, you know, she has more powers because of your nature, right? Like your nature can change, I guess, a little bit, or like she can like go beyond her limit.
肉体と精神とは不可分だ。一つではなく二つのものが互いを作り上げている。だからどんな力であれ人間からハローだけを切り離すそんなことができるはずはない。
So, is he trying to say like a Halo needs somebody to go with it? So like she had to like kind of mold it with her own mind? Is that what he's trying to say?
サクの力は創造の力。人間そのものであるハローを創造できるということ。
Wait, what?
人間を創造しうるということだ。
What? What do you mean? What? Hokuno Yomase had used the word foundation to describe it. It was a power fit for a god, the ability to construct humans. So, when she's taking away their halo, she's like reconstructing them almost? Like, is that what I'm hearing? I'm so confused. Thanks to King Lear 3, all the things that made up a human rested in the palm of Saku Otonashi's hand. Memories, knowledge, personality, techniques, genius, sanctity, vileness, all talents in any mind. She had the ability to fully control the microcosm of every human, giving to some, taking from others. She had the ability to completely change a man, as well as rebuild their talents and powers from the ground up. Oh, okay. The Halo removal she'd always done was merely her reconstructing HMIs with Slider Cinder back into mere humans. Okay, so I was kind of getting in the right direction, yes. Saku didn't take away their halos, instead she rebuilt the very core of their beings. If she continued to evolve as she had, she would eventually have no trouble creating prodigies at will, much like the Academy had intended. Humans built the world, so Saku's ability to rebuild humans meant she had the power to reshape the world as she saw fit. Saku's halo accumulated all kinds of information, taking it all in and letting her create something entirely new. That made it much like the march of mankind itself. Ever since she had ascended and broken a person for the first time, she feared her power and subconsciously dampened it. The ability to rebuild people from the ground up was far above any other Halo. It let her control minds, memories, personalities, bodies, and souls as she pleased. If a person's personality was the manifestation of the path they'd taken, that ability to freely change it was no different from trampling on their very existence. And so, no matter how desperate the situation seemed, she always avoided wielding such a power. However, the gods within us all didn't answer to those who hated themselves. Saku had finally opened her eyes. She learned to love herself much like how she loved others. Well, that's OP. I mean, so they tried to like refer to Ruri as a god. No. Saku is a god. Ruri scattered moment by moment. The petals flowing out of her resembled a pale cloud by that point.
サクはお前のハローを切り離せなかった。当然だろう。ほんの一部分、細胞の一つでも健在な限り、あらゆる現象を凌駕するニカのルリ。部分を再構築したところで、お前には届かない。ならば、丸ごと作り変えてしまうまで。
So wait, is she gonna recreate Ruri as the loving sister that he thought he had all along? Is that where we're going with this? This ending just keeps getting way more ridiculous every second. Absolutely crazy. I mean, I still don't really like it, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, and I'm gonna just be honest, you know, like, I don't really like it, but I'm like, okay, I guess it makes sense. I guess this kind of was coming. Something crazy like this, right? I don't know. It's a little too over the top for me. Too much going on. Too much craziness. The pristine white flower garden extended into the horizon. Those flowers were all aspects of Ruri Mikado. They were countless possibilities that rushed out of her body. It was honestly hard to believe that they all had fit into such a frame so small. There were enough pieces to match the quantity that covered the rest of the world. Saku Otonashi dismantled every single part of Ruri Mikado, then created a new human from scratch. She looks like she's like smiling as she's screaming. Flowers continually bloomed, growing in number without end. The more of herself Ruri lost, the more pale flowers appeared. Each and every one of the petals flowing out of her were what made Ruri, Ruri. I mean, you can't say you don't deserve it, because you do.
ミカドルリ、お前は嵐だ。一つの嵐、一つの弾丸、一つの刃、一つの策略。お前は最初からそうあるべくして生まれただけだ。人にとっての悪であっても、お前には何の罪もない。
So, did they ever properly explain how Ruri got like this? Like, I understand they kept her inside all the time, but I thought that was because of a health condition. So, like, it wasn't, like, crazy. It wasn't like they were, like, doing anything bad. They just were trying to look out for her. So, like, how did she mentally get into this state? Because they said it's not, like, an onslaught syndrome thing. So, I'm trying to picture why she turned out like this. I really don't understand. Like, I see... Later, she had some events that happened that could have led to something like this. But if she was always like this, like, are they gonna explain that more? Like, am I just not okay with that? Like, does anybody else agree with that? Like, I don't know. I'm gonna keep reading, but I just wanted to throw that out there, and hopefully we'll get some closure on that, because it just seems a little far-fetched that like Ruri like is this like super spiteful being ever since she was a kid, even though like nobody saw signs of this, and then now she's like this super evil being. I don't know.
私はお前の命は奪わない。代わりにそれ以外の全てを奪う。
私を虚勢するというのね。お前たちが牛や豚にするように。 己のためだけに世界を作り変える。なんて傲慢で浅ましい。私の方がよほどました。私はただあるものを消費していくだけなのに。
Well, at least Saku wasn't being freaking evil about it.
私たちは傷ついた羽で飛ぼうとする鳥だ。たとえ血を流すと分かっていても、私は空をただ見上げるよりも 飛び続けることを選ぶ。偽物の分際で世界の支配者にでもなったつもりか。セット。
Oh, frick. Ruri Mikado roared like a beast ready to consume the world whole.
As right one was, how it to the gun, they kill us, what is part? Time came near, one. Run!
This was most definitely the first time Ruri Mikado had struggled so desperately. Oh my gosh. The power she wrung out in order to defeat the first real enemy she'd ever faced shook the ground itself and allowed her to cover the dozens of meters between them with a single step. She raised her right arm, the base of her elbow became petals and scattered. She stomped with her right leg, everything below her knee scattered. She jumped with her remaining leg, and as she rose, both of her other limbs were replaced by petals. Oh, this is so satisfying to watch. I mean, if they were gonna bring back Ruri, like, this is how I wanted it to end, like, just screwing her over. You know, she just reminds me of, like, one of those, like, little, like, Chihuahua-type dogs that's just barking at you. You know, and it really doesn't have the power to do much to you. It's just kind of annoying. Ah, it's so satisfying to watch. Even as half of her face became countless flowers, she tried using her other half to bite down on Saku's throat. Oh, and my dog reference works because she's talking about getting spayed.
様を絶対に生きろ。
The last part of Ruri became petals and scattered. Saku stood there alone, proud and victorious. The white garden vanished. Ruri and Taggy reappeared in the exact same spots they had inhabited previously.
こんなのなら死んだ方がマシだ。
Well, you know, you deserve to suffer, because you've been just a dick to everybody. For no reason. Like, if you would have, like, changed after, like, they imprisoned you and did all this crap to you, okay, fine, sure. But you were like this the whole time, so it's your own dang fault. Unharmed yet robbed of everything, my little sister fell to her knees, voicing the first bit of despair she'd ever felt. Taggy, who stood next to her, had an expression of realization on his face. The students had become puppets, lost consciousness, and collapsed the moment Ruri lost her power.
帝ルリー、あなたにはもう何もない。力も血も自分自身である何もかも。それでも生きていけばいい。
Saku needed Tamao's help to even stand. Her prior action had been extremely taxing. Still, Saku Otonashi faced forward. Though hurt and tired, she kept on looking ahead and nowhere else. She had her eyes set on the distant horizon, toward an uncertain future. However, the battle wasn't truly over.
兄様、ルリを撃つのね。
Oh, I'm so conflicted. I'm like, one hand, yes, do this. Just get it over with. On the other hand, she literally just did that to save her and to keep her alive. So why would you do this? I forced my staggering body forward and aimed my oath-sworn arm at her. I chose to gun down my little sister, who had been naught but a human. I chose to gun down my little sister, who I once loved dearly.
成田。成田くん、もうルリちゃんは。
I mean, to be fair, she did screw with him quite a bit. Like, he went on this whole quest of revenge for her, and then she ends up trying to kill him. Like, really? I don't blame him for having some mixed feelings right now. Soroko tried to stop me, but my gaunt arm remained fixed in place.
私は復讐のために帰ってきた。誓いは果たされなければならない。
I had to see things through to the very end, regardless of who the target was. Ruri was no exception. She's still crazy.
誰がお前たちなんかの思い通りになるものか。
Ruri laughed out loud with a proud voice that denied all punishment.
大義、大義、約束を果たして、さあ。
Oh gosh, we still haven't seen what Taigi's freaking power is. It's gonna be a plot twist for sure. Most of those who remained conscious were badly injured. I was the obvious example, but the crowns of many other students were barely in a better state. However, the man next to Ruri appeared almost completely unhurt. The final Etola, the one with the power of prophecy, stood before us. Taggy Genma pulled Ruri Mikado into his arms as though to protect her from my oath-sworn arm.
何をする？
A foolish question. He'd aimed the gun in his hand right at me.
僕は僕の誓いを果たす。でもこんな結末になるとは正直予想もしなかったよ。サク、君がルリに勝てるなんて。
私だけなら勝ち目なんてなかったわよ。
I mean, if you could have used that power like 20 minutes ago, probably.
私たちはルリとは違う。空の星にはなれなくても偽物でも一歩ずつ砂を集めるように積み上げて遠い空へと手を伸ばす。
I don't know, Saku. Let's be clear here. You're the one who can do that. You can literally create stuff, okay? Nobody else here has an ability like that. You can literally create grains of sand, mountains, humans. You can literally create an HMI. You can do whatever you want. Nobody else can do that.
私は一人じゃなかった。
I mean, we helped you get there, but once you were there, it was all you.
いいえ、誰も一人じゃない。私のここにいるみんなのここへたどり着くまでの何か一つが欠けてしまっても、きっと私たちは逆になっていた。
そうか。完全だったからルリは敗れたのか。なんともできすぎた結末と言うべきだろうね。
I mean, maybe she was perfectly evil. She wasn't perfect, though.
敗北を認めて、そしてお前は何をする？大義。
I don't know, Taggy went all in.
お前がたとえ何をしようと、私は己のなすべきことを果たすだろう。
I don't know. I don't think he's gonna do it. Is
しん
he?
ちゃん、僕はここへ至るまでにたくさんの嘘をついてきたけれど、実はもう一つ嘘をついていたんだ。
Yes, please feel free. If you're
今
gonna
それ
do
を告
something,
白してもいいかい？
you're gonna do something. Please let it be more information.
お前が HMI でさえない普通の人間だということか。
Oh, interesting. That would be a little bit of a twist.
おい、それってどういう意味だ？
I mean, we've never seen him use like any kind of like signal. You know, everyone has like something that like activates their ability. We've never seen him do that. So that doesn't surprise me.
そんな、まさか大義は HMI で、だってサクが以前大義のおかげで。
I mean, he could have just made pretty much baseless predictions, or he could have been using Ruri somehow to help him.
寮に来るまで奴が自分で HMI だと名乗ったことはないはずだ。後天性型のアセンションにはきっかけが必要だが、それらしい話も聞いた覚えがない。
I mean, finding out your childhood friend, I don't know. Maybe he's known all along, so maybe this isn't a surprise to him. But if I found like Ruri was still alive, that would be a life-changing event. I don't know.
そういえば、
But yeah, he's always seemed kind of unmotivated in life.
でも
やはり君にはお見通しだったか。隠し事は得意なはずだったんだが。
相性だろう。
どうしてあなたはそんな真似をしたの？
最初はスクールの管理のためだった。学生の中に同世代の管理者が混じっている方がスクールという場の維持には都合が良かったんだ。予言はスクールのシステムの賜物さ。精度の高い情報を揃えれば角度の高い推測や予測も可能になる。なかなかのものだったろ。
Okay, like I said, I don't really care for the Ruri twist. Little over the top for me, but I actually do like Taggy's part of this. I think his is actually very interesting, learning that he didn't have any kind of halo and that he was just pretty much using the assets around the school to kind of make these out-of-pocket predictions, right? I think that's okay. I'm okay with that.
でも僕は
It's nothing exciting, but
ことあるごとに思い知らされていた。僕たちが君たちとは違うということを。
それはあなたが HMI じゃなくても私たちは。
AHM の考えることが僕には手に取るようにわかる。 HMI が可能性であるとすれば自分たち残されたものはどうなるのだろう。誰もが全てを持ち合わせていない。 HMI かどうかはそんな些細な違いの一つでしかない。だけど今が変わることが置いていかれることだとそう思う者はいるんだよ。空行く者には落ちていく同胞は目に入るだろう。でも地を這う虫のことはきっとわからない。
Yeah, no, it would be very hard to not be someone with powers and then find out about these humans that have powers and are able to do all these amazing things. I do feel like that would create like an even bigger divide than there is now. I mean, obviously with humanity, there is kind of a divide between people. You know, you have positions of power, right? Like, you know, I wouldn't compare myself to like the president of the United States. You know, I would say he's a much more important human than me, even though like we claim to like say, oh, all humans are equal, right? But you know, some positions are different. And I feel like if you had a position of power where you had this halo, right, and you had these abilities, that would put you differently than other humans, that would separate you in a way. So I could see why they would be opposed to that and see them as a threat, because in some ways we've learned that they really aren't human. I mean, they are, but they aren't, okay? You know, when we talk about onslaught syndrome, you know, the devil descent, yeah, that can get a little crazy. That's a little inhuman. But and then you got Ruri over here, who the frick knows what Ruri's been doing. She's not even hardly human anymore, and now she is again, I guess. I don't know, this whole ending is like throwing my brain for a loop.
僕らはあんなに一緒にいたのにどうしてこんなに離れてしまったんだろうね。
Because you were secretly plotting to like help Ruri, who was trying to kill everybody. Gee, I wonder.
僕はずっと大義やルリちゃんや春水と一緒にいたかった。
もう終わったことだよ。何もかも終わってしまって、今さら何一つ取り返しなんてつかない。
I don't know. You can't change the past, but you can improve things going in the future. Like, if there's something you don't like about yourself today, you can change that right now. Like, it doesn't matter if you haven't changed it for years. Like, you can start now and keep working on that. Like, there's never a time when you, like, can't stop working on something. I mean, obviously, there's gonna be things that, like, have, you know, gone away. Like, if there's something in the past you wanted to change, but you can always try to do better in the future.
どうしてこうなってしまったんだろう。理由を知りたくて僕はずっと考えていた。でもやっぱりわからなかった。まるでこの世界にはたった一つの答えなんて最初からないかのようだ。
I don't know, Taggy. You went from being a character that I didn't respect, I didn't really like you very much, and then I started respecting you. You started becoming a little bit better of a person in some of the other routes, and you were helping us, and you know that was nice. Even though you like tried to kill us with the SSDs for whatever reason, I'm not sure if that was him or Tokino or whoever sent them to the Shinzen residence, and he kind of like gained my respect a little bit, right? And then he just lost it all here at the end, just all of it. Like, okay, maybe I have a little bit, you know, for the things he did do good, but like, it's just sad.
父のやることが、このスクールが人類の未来を作るのか、それとも間違いなのか。答えが欲しくて考えていた。他にもたくさんのことをずっと考えていたんだ。
お前は考えていただけだ。何一つ踏み出さなかった。黒船に反旗を翻すこともなかった。AHM に加わるでもなかった。ルリを救うことさえしなかった。
That's a good point. He kind of has just sat there the whole time. Like, he's been kind of like saying stuff. He's just like, oh, I'm just standing by to help Ruri, but you didn't really do anything. You let Ruri out, and that's all you've done. You did more in Tamao's route. You actually killed Kurofune, which I think was him actually, you know, going out of his way to do something. He was trying to take out Kurofune, who obviously in that route he just disagreed with and was willing to do something about it. Very interesting turn of events. Really, in the other routes, he hasn't done anything too drastic. So, Very interesting character, that's for
手
sure.
厳しいね。
I would say that's pretty spot on.
しゅんちゃん、君の言う通りだ。僕には何も選べなかった。古い世界も新しい世界もルリも人間であることも HMI でないことも。
I don't know, if I had to put him on one of those kind of boards, you know, where it has like lawful good and all that, I think he would be like chaotic neutral. Like he's very, I don't know, like he wants to cause chaos, but he's like, oh, I don't really care who wins. Like, you know, I'm just here for the ride. Like, not even have fun. He's just here for the ride.
流されるままに受け取ってきた。父と時の先生が死ななければ、僕はルリをずっと閉じ込めたままでいただろう。
Gosh, I wonder what would have happened if like she got let out way later. Like, what would have happened if she kept gaining power?
だから最後ぐらいは誓いを果たすよ。
そうよ、大二。あなたは私のものだもの。あの時からずっと。
This is like the weirdest romance, if you could even call it that.
ルリちゃんやめて。これ以上やったってどうにもならないよ。
Zorko, what are you getting mad? What is she gonna do?
お前たちにはそんなこともわからないのね。
I don't know. Could you have not gotten rid of this like really pissy personality?
最後までやり通すのか、ルリ。
そうよ、お兄様。帝ルリは屈さない。
Oh gosh, what is she gonna do? Even after being stripped of everything, she proudly puffed out her chest. The girls truly deserved to be called a shining star, an étoile, at long last. The siblings whose path had diverged 7 long years ago had their impossible reunion. Yeah, and that's why I hate this ending, because it's literally impossible. Like, honestly, Narita's, you know, coming about is pretty crazy. That's pretty far-fetched, right? That's pretty out there. The fact that he pretty much survived being killed twice. Like, I don't know, it's just very unbelievable that, like, Kurofune wouldn't have finished the job like he did. He just shot him in the hand and then never finished him off, and then he thought he died in the plane crash, which he probably should have died in too. But this part right here is even more impossible.
しゅんちゃん、君も今撃たれたら避けられないだろう。君はルリの敵で父の黒船の仇だ。僕には君を撃つ理由と資格がある。
I mean, to be fair, Taggy does have a point. Narita's talked this whole time about doing what you think is right, even though it's going to trample on other people's happiness. I think Taggy's actually in the right here to say that. He aimed his gun straight at me, but instead of fear, I felt a strange sense of peace.
そんな幕引きも悪くない。
Alright, here's how we do this, okay? Narita is going to shoot Ruri. Taggy's going to shoot Narita. And then that'll be the end. That'll be the end of the game. Can we do that? Does that sound fair?
成田、自分だけ勝手に舞台を降りるな。
That would be not really a great ending, but I think lore-wise it fits.
成田君やめて。これ以上僕を置いていかないで。
そして僕は黒船の息子で7年前父たちの策略を知っていて、君がどうなるか知っていて口をつぐんだ裏切り者だ。君にも
frick.
僕を撃つ理由はある。
When you say it like that, he technically has reason to kill both of them. So if he kills one, then he's really not fulfilling his goal.
お前はルリに仕えただけだ。裏切りではなく一つのものに捧げようとした。成田真理が果たすべき復讐はあと一つ。自分で選んだ道だ。私は最後までやり遂げよう。
ああ
He fired the gun rather plainly. The hammer fell, releasing an echo and a bullet. Oh my gosh, how many shots are you firing? Then he pulled the trigger several more times. However, the barrel was aimed above me, so none of the bullets hit.
なぜだ
君を撃つなんて
I listened to a dear old friend's final words as I kept my oath-sworn arm trained to my little sister.
いつか4人で見た虹を覚えているかい美しかったね
Gosh, this is such a weird ending. Like, we just had this, like, super epic battle, and now we're, like, reminiscing about old times. Really strange ending. It's all over the place.
とても
雨が上がれば虹は消えてしまう消えた虹は一体どこへ行ってしまうんだろう
あの虹は今も空の果てで輝いているだろう
I spoke without hesitation. A certain girl made me believe that without a shadow of a doubt.
たとえ形が変わっても輝けるものはそこにある
そろそろ別れの時間が来たようだしゅんちゃん
お前の求めた完全はもうそこにはない
いいんだよ今初めて僕は何の迷いもなく思えるどんなに変わってしまってもルリは僕にとってただ一つの輝けるものだ僕は最後まで彼女の願いを叶えようルリがルリであり続けることを守ろう
I don't know, Taggy. It's kind of sad because you have all these feelings for her. Or at least, I don't know if they're like love or just friendship. You know, just you kind of dedicated your life to her. I don't feel like she feels like that back. And that's kind of sad. You've dedicated your life to somebody who doesn't care about you at all. Or at least doesn't care about you enough to really do anything for you.
追わないでくれるかいしゅんちゃん
I mean, we could just let them go, too. I mean, is that what we're gonna do? Are we just gonna call it good? Like, what are they gonna do? They don't have HMIs. They could come back to try to kill us later, but what are they gonna do about it, you know? Go with AHM? Like, I don't know. Maybe that is the better option. One of the buildings on the Academy's grounds burned behind Taggy, clearly due to our battles. Still holding Ruri, he backed away from us. I didn't even have to ask to know his destination.
僕は知っていたルリを解き放った時何が起こるかそれでも彼女は美しい
黒船も何かを信じていたのだろう
時の先生もそして
Yeah, I wonder what they think. Like, they're just sitting here, like, listening to this BS. Like, Saku, Tamao, Soriko, and Ero joined the scene. They were all injured, and some needed others to support them. Their legs trembled, but they still stood tall. Those girls who found what truly shined in their eyes watched the final act of the 7-year revenge tragedy that was my very own Hamlet.
傷ついた翼で血を流しながら飛ぶ鳥のようだ
そうだお前がそうだったように誰もがそうだあまたの罪を踏みながら信じる灯火目指して歩き続ける巡礼それがきっと我々だ
Lots of symbolism correlating to their halos. You know, a lot of the language used here is talking about, you know, the pilgrims and committing sins and the Hamlet. That's all relating to the girls and Narita's halos. Interesting.
僕は君のようには強くなれないよしゅんちゃん
お前は甘すぎるだがお前がいなければ空子は救えなかったろう
Yes, the part that sucks, he's helped us out. Like, he's really, like, made an effort at times, but at other times he just kind of is this pastor, or this, what is the right word I'm looking for? Okay, I can't think of it, but I don't know. He just kind of sits there and lets things happen. He's a true chaotic, neutral chaotic.
ちゃんと僕を助けようとしてくれた。どんなに取り返しのつかないことがたくさんあったとしても、そのことを僕は絶対忘れたりしない。
しゅんちゃん、空子を頼む。
チカを
I'll take better care of her than you would.
空子、君はもっと素直に生きればいい。
I'm sorry, this is... I have such a hard time taking this seriously. Like, he's, like, telling us things and, like, how to live our lives when he just tried to pretty much end them. Whether he meant to or not, he released Ruri, and he said he knew what she was gonna do. This didn't surprise him. I just think it's pretty, well, it's ironic for one thing, and I feel like it's pretty... I don't know, almost hypocritical. Like, he's trying to save Sorako, but at the same time, he literally unleashed Ruri, who was going to kill her. So...
Taggy. Taggy. 何を言ってるんだよ。
I'm just imagining Sorako being like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? You're just trying to kill me, you frick!
望むものを欲しがってもいいんだ。強くなってやっつけてしまえよ。
You know, shut up.
僕はそうなれなかった。
Alright, that's the one true thing you said. No, Sorako, leave him.
生きることもできなかった。死ぬこともできなかった。もう一度彼女と会いたかった。ただなすがまま流されるままに過ごした7年だった。それもここで幕だ。この輝けるものと共に。
Saku tried to shout something, but then looked at me and fell silent. She understood that even millions of words wouldn't change his mind.
泣いてくれるな。嘆きは必要ない。
I'm not gonna cry for you, what the frick?
でも涙で送られることのなんという幸福だろう。それはきっとそのものの命に価値があったということだから。
Freaking, I'm just gonna regret having not shot you, you freaking annoying twat.
今宵僕は歓喜に震えているよ。だってこんなにも残酷な世界が祝福を与えてくれた。僕のたった一つの望みを叶えてくれた。この輝ける世界のすべてに感謝を。僕はここで舞台を降りるが、罪深い君はどこへ行く？
I had no answer. Shinru Narita had nowhere left to go. After making ample distance between us, Taggy lowered his gun.
さあ、タイに行きましょう。
Honestly, I feel like leaving her alive is kind of a bad end. I'm curious to see how the true end is going to change things or what it will do. I'm just hoping she doesn't come back and like something crazy happens. Taggy turned to face those in the audience who still lived. With blinding flames behind him, he played the part of the lead actor, putting his hand on his chest and bowing affectionately.
それでは皆様、これにて幕でございます。
It's like, hey, we just killed hundreds of people. We're just gonna walk away now and pretend like none of this happened. See ya. Gosh, I wish y'all would have burned at the stake. The two of them left, disappearing in the Crimson Hell, running, crawling, and supporting each other. I could have followed them easily enough, but I decided against it. I no longer had any reason to. No, I'm not clapping. I refuse. Saku clapped with tears in her eyes. Oh my gosh, I hate all of you. Nobody is bothered by this? Like, am I the only one here? Am I the only one who's like, this is a terrible idea? That was a requiem for not just for Taggy and Ruri, but also for the others who'd perished that night. So we're gonna clap. We're gonna clap to all the people who died. Does that not bother anybody? The conscious survivors looked up at the flames. Anger, sadness, and even hatred colored their faces. Yeah, gosh, I would be so pissed if I was one of the people who like got hurt during this whole thing and had friends die, and I just see those two walking away. Like, bruh, really? Grief and pain dominated their minds. They didn't even have any concern to spare, and yet some in the audience joined in on Saku's clapping. I absolutely hate this ending. I hate this so much. We provided a solemn farewell to those whom we loved so dearly yet hated so strongly. It reached far into the night sky alongside the billowing flames. It was akin to a bell rung by survivors to mark the end of a war. We sent our well wishes to the only thing which gave light to this world. Okay, just before we move on, I would have been way happier with that ending if they did something to Ruri, like changed her personality, like something happened in her past that like made her like that, and so they like reverted it back to the old Ruri. I think that would have made this ending just fine. I would have been happy. I would have been fine with them walking off after all that happened, because it would have been like she wouldn't have remembered it, so I wouldn't hold it against her. But no, we're just gonna let her evil self just walk away with Taggy, who was also complicit in all this because he let her out. And he knew that the Mikudos were gonna get attacked, said nothing. We're just letting them go. I'm sorry. I'm just not okay with that ending. I'm like, I can't say that's a good ending. I'm hoping the true end maybe does something differently, or maybe, I don't know. We'll see. Where to begin? The Academy's destroyed facilities were slowly being rebuilt. That's good. I mean, it does seem to be working out, considering all the people are pretty much dead. Hishia, how are you? I'm so excited to see you again. You freaking came in clutch there at the end. I saw you. You were banding with the other students to try to save us. I saw that. I respect it. Narita's maid, Mori Hishia, replied to my question in a respectful tone. She noticed that all the work weighed me down, so she started helping me out. She acted like my secretary, and honestly, I enjoyed feeling a little like a CEO. She had numerous skills, so she more than made up for my lack of experience. Though she wasn't my only maid. Wait, what? Wait, when did we get this maid? What the? The other was an SSD, the armed maid number 2. With Miss Tokino and Taggy gone, he defaulted to following the Academy's temporary supervisor, me. He proved to be quite a capable bodyguard, so I truly appreciated him. I don't know. I wouldn't want an SSD as a maid because it looks like Ruri under there, and it's a guy, which is a little weird to me. Just everything about it is just wrong, and it's not even ours. Like, we didn't create the SSD, and it's like probably some messed up thing that created it in the first place. Like, I don't know. That am I the only one bothered by this game? Like, I feel like I keep having to say that. Nobody else is bothered by these things. I'm the only one. I'm just all alone. Just stressing out about it a little bit. Soka. Perhaps it was best to start from the top. First of all, most of the incidents from that night had been resolved, though what little remained felt far too awful for words. Half of the Academy's facilities had been either demolished or burned, and that was just the start. Yeah, and they keep talking about the Academy like that matters. Like, hundreds of people died. Like, are we not gonna mention that more? Like, is that not matter? After the Academy's facilities had either been demolished or burned, and that was just the start, Ruri had expressed her happiness on that night by completely destroying the research building, leaving no survivors. I felt I had blown away most of the buildings, but I didn't fret the details. AHM extremists had ended up killing nearly 40 lecturers and employees as well as dozens of students. Honestly, The fact that Ruri's massacre had been a relatively minor issue in comparison explained everything a person had to know about the severity of the situation. I mean, we lost the two leading figures of the academy, the chairman and the head lecturer. Yeah, I feel like they just totally glossed over. Oh yeah, so a lot of people died, but anyways, that's what I felt like that whole part right there just said. So some had wondered if the place could be maintained even if it was rebuilt, and a couple fervently believed that it was best to just destroy it completely. In order to prevent that outcome, I'd gone directly to the prefecture's governor and talked to him. He was a rotund, crafty-looking, bespectacled old man, but communicating with him had proved to be rather simple. Well, yeah, you can just use your halo, so I would imagine that's pretty easy to do. He'd approved the continued existence of the academy rather quickly. Of course, the talks only progressed because I gave him a glimpse of the ace up my sleeve. The academy had committed countless illegal acts, and many top-ranking politicians were complicit, including some from the central government. I had mountains of physical and intangible evidence, so bringing it up proved quite effective. I had Narita to thank for that idea. Oh. Are they talking about Saku did this? Oh, I thought this was from Narita's perspective. I'm sorry. That night, right after Ruri left, while we still spaced out, he told us to gather data from the still functional servers at the plant and the research building in order to use them in negotiations. He claimed that how we used it would decide the fate of the academy. Oh, I trembled with excitement when I heard that. Side note, the governor had kept his involvement with said activities vague, masterfully won me over, and planned to use the documents to get rid of his political opponent, namely Director General's faction. He was clearly a clever individual who was hard to pin down. And so, with certain conditions attached, the academy had continued to exist under the direct control of T Prefecture's governor. It had been reclassified as a problem deterrent and correctional facility for HMIs. But how long would that setup last? About a third of the students had died that night. That was 1 in 3. Yeah, that's how math works, yep. Many had lost acquaintances and friends. Plus, those like me who had turned into HMIs by the drug that Narita had named the Seed of Consecration, had our own unique problems. Without the death of the mainframe, Ruri Mikado, it was unlikely that we would lose control again, but there was no guarantee. In a way, we were ticking time bombs. Perhaps I could solve that problem with my halo, but we decided to deal with it head on instead. Haru and Tamao were causing a ruckus on the hallway of the unrepaired school building. I mean, she was kind of here for one thing, and that thing's kind of been fulfilled, so... Tamao scratched her head with a troubled expression on her face.
だから見つからないうちに行こうと思ったのに、エルのやつ邪魔しやがって。この前話したろ？俺、外の人間だし、育ちが悪いって。ここに来たのも理由があったからだし、やることやったし。だから、ここにいる意味、もうねえんだ。
ねえんだ、じゃないです。調子ね。
You tell her, Arrow.
うわ、蹴りやがった。あ、また。
She did it twice. Tamao seemed determined. A part of me felt that her departure was unavoidable, but it made me feel lonely all the same.
もう少しだけ待ってくれない？
説得とかしても意味ねえぞ。
かもしれないけど、後でもう一度話しましょう。気が変わるかもしれないでしょ。
どこ行くんだよ。
I trotted off to where I had to be. Hishia followed me.
すぐに戻るから。
行っちゃいました。
身勝手なやつ。
サクはいつでも正しい。
サクはいつでも正しい。
Oh, okay. So, my thing I said earlier about, you know, the SSD and all that. Okay, that's a little bit better, like ever so slightly better. Ever so slightly, because it's not Narita, like, who's like essentially her master. But still, it's really bad. Still really weird. I arrived at the Rose Garden and caught sight of Soriko. Soroko had placed flowers next to a pile of rocks at the edge of the garden. It was a small pile put together in a way that let the forest entrance hide it. She'd done that deliberately, of course.
二人とも一緒にいるのかな。
かもね。
The pile of rocks acted as a small grave marker of sorts. It was for Chairman Mikado, Miss Tokino, Taggy, Ruri, and others who couldn't be openly mourned. The fact that the leaders of the academy had caused the deaths of many was still a secret to the outside world, but those within the walls had heard the rumors, so everyone knew. Due to that, even speaking their names had become taboo. Many people had died. Chairman Mikado, Miss Tokino, and Taggy had committed grave sins. However, they'd also done things that ended up saving us. Are we not including Ruri, the person who probably committed the most sins here? The world was just in the most contradictory of ways. Truly separating good and evil was utterly impossible. They intertwined like a double helix, and neither of them was the genuine article. I didn't disagree with those who cursed them as devils, but I also thought it fair to thank them at least.
どうかしたの？
I called out to my friend. She had spaced out.
大丈夫。一人じゃないし。
いいけど驚きだわ。いや、時々そういう兆候はあったけど。
Soroko had a split personality. She told us about it soon after that night had ended. Honestly, she should have opened up to us far earlier.
幼い頃病気になって、その時時の先生が駆けつけてくれたんだ。親戚なんだけど、それ以上に命の恩人で。
And that was why she felt the need to mourn her.
それで病気が治った後 HMI になったんだ。
へえ。
Soroko was an HMI who'd experienced an ascension, and about a sixth of those were induced by the seed of consecration. What if Miss Tokino had used a special drug to save young Soroko's life? Her becoming an HMI might have been a side effect, which would have meant her second personality came from. No, that was enough. No matter where it came from, Soroko had saved us of her own free will. Theorizing about such matters felt crude.
もう一人って呼びにくいわよね。
響ちゃん。成田くんがつけてくれたんだ。
Did we give her that name in this route too? Like, we gave her that name in the other route. I don't remember us saying it in this one.
へえ。
I realized it was poor form to be jealous of Soroko, but the fact that the boob maniac had spent time with her when I rarely got to see him angered me. And that anger reminded me that I still had a long way to go as a human. Soroko and Narita were childhood friends. The looks that graced their faces when they stood around each other told me that they shared a unique bond. With her parents, Miss Tokino and Taggy gone, Narita was the only one close to her. Yet he was also the one who murdered her parents and Miss Tokino. That is true.
そういえば、成田はこっちにいるって。
さっき荷物をまとめて正門の方へ行ったよ。出て行くんだって。もうここですることはなくなったからって。
あの野郎、玉緒と一緒じゃない。どうせこんなことだろうと思ったから走ってきたのに。この私に一言の断りもなく。
I prepared to chase after him, but then stopped in place. I had to confirm something first.
空子、あなた、成田にどうしてほしい？
He was a constant reminder of what had happened to her parents and Miss Tokino, so keeping him too close felt odd. As an outsider, I'd honestly thought Soroko's parents were scum, but she'd loved them nonetheless. And Narita had killed him in order to fulfill his oath of vengeance. Soroko had a right to curse him or even see him as an enemy. In fact, I wouldn't have been surprised if she swore to enact revenge.
サクは成田くんにいてほしい？
私のことはどうでもいいから。あなた、もっと貪欲に自分のしたいことしなきゃダメよ。空子はどうしたいの？
She gazed up at the sky with roses in hand.
ここにいてほしい。
それでいいの？
いい。そうしてほしい。みんなたくさん傷ついた。 成田くんも十分傷ついてきた。
What a thing to say about your mortal enemy.
本当はそばにいてほしいんだけど、それだとサクに悪いから。
I didn't know how to react to that utterly serious proclamation. Would she really feel bad? Perhaps she had been processing her goodbye with Taggy in her own way. I really didn't want to start a catfight with such a close friend, though. I'd taken half of Soriko's halo, and I didn't know if it was that or the onslaught syndrome itself, but she seemed to be changing in eerie ways. If we seriously fought, we would have risked the existence of the Academy as a whole. I made a note in bright red ink that if that happened, we would bury Narita under the roses and restore our friendship by hugging and crying it out. Oh, well, okay, I'm glad you have that all planned out. That's great.
じゃあちょっと犯人を捕まえてくる。
Sounds like a plan.
いってらっしゃい。
それと菱や。
はい、おとなし様。
She'd watched our conversation with a tender smile, but when I called out to her, she donned a composed
言い
expression.
なさいよ。
口止めされておりましたので。
Yep, she's a loyal maid.
バカ。
Saku, that's why she's best girl and you're not, okay? At that point, I dashed off on my own.
バカだよね。
全くでございます。
Hishia just roasting Saku, I love it. I walked through the main gate after completing my preparations. Turning around, I saw the Academy's scarred grounds, which had actually healed quite nicely. The signs of battle would one day vanish completely, but that was a world outside sharing Narita's scope. With the cleanup done, I'd actually done all I had to do, so I no longer had a reason to stay. Feeling thoroughly fulfilled, I reached a new crossroads and prepared to take a step forward.
どこへ行くの？
However, before I took that step, Saku ran up from behind me. I tried to leave before she caught me, but alas, I failed.
私のやるべきことは終わった。
逃げるの？
Running away, perhaps that was the case. I consigned even my little sister to the flame of vengeance, so I no longer had anything precious in my life. A man who lived for vengeance, who had taken and ruined many lives, had no place he truly belonged. What about Saku? You fell in love with her, you frick. Just forgetting that conveniently. It would have been far better if I had expired back then. How was I supposed to live?
ここに残りなさい。
それはできない。いや、私が望んだところでそれを許さない者は多いだろう。成田真理がいなければこうはならなかった。それはまさしく真実なのだから。
I don't know. Things definitely would have been different, but I think this was necessary. This needed to happen.
今さらあなたが他人の目を気にするなんてね。
She sighed as if she found my statement ludicrous.
成田真理は、いや、私はこの結末に至るまでの道のりであまりに多くの血を流してきた。復讐という舞台を選び取ったのは己自身の意志。そこに悔いはないが罪はある。血まみれの衣装を着たまま今さら安らぎを得ようとはおこがましいとは思わないかね。君こそここにいていいのか。
それは。
音無し作のハローは文字通り世界を変える。システムにとっては喉から手が出る逸材。いや、彼らだけではなくあらゆるものが君を欲する。
I don't know. I don't feel like she would have to have anybody on her side. I think she would be the side. Like, she wouldn't go to their side. They would come to her side because she would be the de facto leader, wouldn't she? I mean, she's the one who has all the power.
今はカードを武器に立ち回ることもできるが、君の価値はそれこそ国一つ潰しても釣り合うほどだ。どの手合いもいずれ手段を選ばなくなる。
そうね。そうしたら今度こそ本当のモルモットか道具にされるでしょうね。理事長たちみたいなやり方は期待できない。それともいっそ邪魔だって始末されるかも。
I'm glad you're being smart about it. You realize that.
君こそ今すぐ逃げるべきだろう。
罪人が何もかも捨てて逃げるなんて許されない。 あなたが血まみれだと言うなら、私だって何も変わらない。大勢の罪もない同胞たちをこの手にかけて、あったはずの可能性を摘み取ってしまった。
あれはルリがやったこと。君のせいではない。
Yeah, if we think about it, probably the most innocent person out of the main characters would actually be Soriko. I think Soriko is probably the person who has the least blood on her hands. And she's actually probably the most forgiving person, too, even though Narita has killed, you know, all the people closest to her, essentially. You know, she still appreciates him.
たとえ彼女のやったことでも、私が大勢を殺したのは揺るぎない事実よ。私の中にあった弱さがルリにつけ込まれた。それはきっと私の罪。
I mean, no, Saku, I wouldn't blame you at all for that, because you have part of her blood, which I'm assuming you didn't want, and that was how she controlled you and made you do those things. It wasn't anything to do with your own weakness.
君の気高さは素晴らしいが、それとこれとは話が違う。ここにいれば償いも何もない。君は世界の正しさに押しつぶされるだろう。抵抗もできず、彼らの道具になる。ルリの言った通りだ。クラウンは今度こそ
Oh gosh.
道家になりおせる。
I almost forgot about that. That was so funny. It was the funniest thing. We're just in the middle of this serious fight. The crown shall become a true clown. That was so funny. I loved it.
逃げてどうにかなるの？逃げ切れるとは思えない。遅かれ早かれ必ず捕まる。
Frankly, that was an overstatement. The broader world was filled with unknown variables and potential threats. There were witches out there strong enough to rival entire navies, yet the system regarded them as insignificant. We, on the other hand, were simple people who had no ties to such magic, and so had no choice but to rely on the things our weak hands could grasp.
君の力なら不可能も押し通せるかもしれない。サク、私が君の。
待って、それはなし。
Saku rejected my proposal to help her escape before I even presented it. Indeed, what was the point of doing that? Offering my help to Saku Otonashi, who didn't even want to run away, was an insult to her pride and nobility.
ではおとなしく待つのかね。それを罪の裁きとして。
Saku puffed out her chest and shook her head.
それは裁きでも何でもない。世界の正しさが私を捉えるというだけよ。それに私はこの学園を守りたい。以後も続々現れてくる HMI 仲間たちに救いを。
それこそ不可能だ。それを許さない者たちがいる。
方法はあるわ。
Did she intend to change the world with her halo? A worldwide majestic memory empire comprised entirely of Saku's. What a truly wonderful idea, except...
いや、そんな他人に見せるなんて、そんなもったいない。
Shut up!
何を考えてるのよ。変なこと想像しないで。
Ah, yep.
時の先生が言ってたでしょ。オール、私たちの目指すべき場所、到達することが誇りある私たちの目的だって。
Heck yes, we got this freaking song going. Oh, so good. I opened my eyes wide and listened.
彼らから逃げられないなら、私が彼らのあり方を変えるまでよ。もともとそこへ行くために私たちはいた。本来の目的を果たしてやるだけじゃない。
The fearless maiden before me actually intended to reach the highest peak of humanity and rule over everything. Her claim wasn't merely audacious, it was pure madness. To face the system was to face the world itself. Even if Saku was immensely powerful and even if all the HMIs of the Academy banded together, it was still woefully inadequate. Even Kurofune had collapsed while blocking that path.
まるで夢物語だ。できると思っているのか。
I mean, to be fair, she kind of can do anything.
できるかどうかが問題じゃない。私はやると言ってるの。
Her halo is literally like life itself.
そうよ。 この黄昏も落日も何もかも超えて音無作は輝く明日へ行く。
The tiny maiden claimed she would challenge the world itself and come out on top. The word arrogant didn't cut it. She was insane. There was a limit to how much of a Don Quixote you could be, and she's far exceeded it. That comical assertion of hers was so bright that I barely managed to keep my eyes open.
でも私一人だと無理。手伝ってほしいの。
The hand she presented seemed to shine.
それは私の償いだというのかね。
罪があるとしたら大勢の自由を汚したことよ。
人は他人の自由を侵害しない限り自由であるべきだ。しかし生きるとは多かれ少なかれ他人の自由を踏みにじることを意味している。
そうね。それがあなたの罪であり私たちの罪でもある。この世界の正しさがそうあれと言っている。だから私はそれを変えるために行く。成田真理は自分のための戦いを貫いた。あなたはなすべき誓いのすべてを果たし終えた。そのためにあらゆるものを踏み越えてきた。
I mean, yeah, pretty much. I mean, kind of, you know, Taggy and Ruri just kind of walked away, so, I don't know, maybe they kind of count too.
だからこれからはあなたが奪ってきたもののために戦いなさい。あなたと同じように奪われた人たちの涙を拭ってあげるための生き方をなさい。この私の隣で一緒に前を向いて私とは違う景色を見ながらいつかあなたの舞台の幕が今度こそ正しく降りるまで私はそれを見届けてあげる。もしもあなたが道を間違ったら私が断ち切る剣になるわ。
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, that's what all good friends do. We cut each other down.
そして私が謝ることがあればその時はあなたの手でピリオドを打って。
Oh, well, that sounds very grim. She proposed a sacred promise where we entrusted our lives to each other while walking side by side on the path toward the horizon. What a wonderful, blissful, flowery path.
罪を償う者がそんな喜びに満ちた道を選
罰は償いじゃないと私は思う。
You know, I like that line. That's a good line. I feel like a lot of people think like if they do something bad in life that they have to suffer for it, you know? And it's like, yeah, sometimes you will suffer, you know, because there's consequences to your actions, right? Like whether you're doing something good or bad, there's always going to be some kind of consequence to things. But you know, I like that, saying that there doesn't always have to be some like negative downside to atoning, because if you're trying to atone, you're trying to make up for what you did wrong, right? So why should you be punished while you're trying to do that? I mean, obviously you're probably going to in some way be punished. Like if you hurt somebody, they're going to look down on you now because you've hurt them, essentially, right? So, you know, that's in some way your punishment is you've kind of ruined your relationship with them a little bit, or at least hurt it. And then your atonement, you know, where you're trying to like make it good again. So, you know, but there doesn't always have to be a punishment. Some people are more forgiving. Some people just love you anyways, even though you've hurt them, right? So I like that line a lot.
人が生きるには喜びが必要だわ。何者にも幸せになる権利があると言ったのはあなたでしょう。罪人でも喜びを得ていけないわけじゃない。
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that.
でもそれを許せない人はたくさんいるでしょう。奪われた人たちは私たちが何かを得ることを決して許さないでしょう。それもきっと正しい。自分のやったことが返ってくるだけよ。すべてを受け入れよう。 これからやってくる怒りも恨みも憎しみも非難も蔑みも悪意も敵意も呪いも、それを超えて一緒に喜びを抱いて先へ進もう。私たちが今はまだ見知らぬところへ、今よりもほんの少しだけ良きところへ。
You can certainly hope so. I closed my eyes inside when he asked those I'd robbed, those I'd killed, and those I'd harmed in the future for forgiveness. It seemed Shin and Narita still had things left to live for.
約束しよう、おとなし作。私は残るすべてで君のそばにあり続けよう。君の抱いた夢の結末をこの目で見届けるために、私の命と魂のすべてを費やそう。
You know, Narita, I think that's a good choice.
挑む時には立ち向かう剣となろう。苦難の時にはその身を守る盾となろう。もしも君が進むべき道を誤つ時には約束を果たす探検となるだろう。いつか君の願いの果たされるその日まで。
After I said that, we took each other's hands, at long last. For once, we weren't merely facing the same direction. We may have seen entirely different things, but we still shared a dream and sought the same
あ
destination.
なたの本当の名前、あなたの言葉で教えて。
成田真理だよ、おとなし作。それで古い名は役割を終えた。役割を終えた者は埋葬される。別れは悲しいが次の始まりでもある。我々は変わることを恐れてはならない。
It was near no time to close the curtain on this tale. It was near time to close the curtain on this tale. The chapter of the demonic avenger driven mad by rage had ended, and a new story would soon begin, a modern fairy tale. Tale of a foolish young maiden and her absurdly grandiose dream. Like Don Quixote, the great fool wished to surpass the justice of the world itself. It would be an arduous journey, and she wouldn't travel it alone. She had a great many friends with her, as well as a man who once lived for hatred, but had since found his peace. The path was long, so long that it was hard to tell if there was even an end in sight, but even so, she planned to always trek forward, never looking
長
back.
くて険しい道なんでしょうね。
どれだけ険しくても輝けるものが見えているのなら、その道は喜びに満ちているよ。我々は傷ついた羽で飛び続ける鳥だ。たとえ血を流すのだと分かっていても、飛ぶことを選ばずにはいられない。彼方を目指して羽ばたきながら見上げる空の果てには、あの日見たのと同じ道が今でもきっと輝いている。
Is there gonna be credits? Okay. It just took a really long time to get there. I was like, should I say something? Should I not? I don't know. So I believe that's what we're doing next. The Superior is supposed to be like the two other endings we can get. And then I think there's a true ending. So we're gonna definitely do all those coming up here soon. But I guess I'll give some closing thoughts, because this is kind of the end. Kind of. Yeah, I would say it is the end, but there is some more. I'm not sure what to say. But okay, so I will say I did like the ending. Okay, I didn't really care for the Ruri part, but I'm like, okay, I guess if you need a story, it does work. And I don't know, it's fine, I guess. I don't know. I guess her character just kind of pisses me off, the way she's like so evil and like has no good in her at all. Like I just don't like her for that reason, so I just don't like her part in the ending. But other than that, though, I mean, I liked hearing about Taggy. I liked hearing just kind of his reveal there at the end, like he didn't have an HMI. I thought that was cool. Let's see. I like the conclusion that they came to with Saku. Saku wasn't just gonna like use her power and change everything. She was gonna try to do it by herself, essentially. You know, with the help of her friends, obviously, with Narita and stuff. But she wasn't just gonna use her halo and just snap her fingers and then do everything. You know, she was gonna try to go out there and change the world in some way, which I like. I think that's cool. I like it. Gosh, but this freaking route was long, and it had so much stuff going on. I mean, there were so many reveals, especially even in Eru's route. Like, they just started revealing stuff about Saku, and then they took it a step further in her route, which I figured they were going to do. I knew they were going to make it more crazy somehow, and they certainly did that. I will say that actually happened. I was wondering how they're going to make it crazier, and they did. Let's see, Soriko kind of got some closure. I feel like Soriko very ignored after her route. Didn't really like show much with her. And nobody was bothered by the fact that they did all this crap. Taggy and Ruri screwed over everybody in every way possible. Nobody's complaining about this. Maybe I'm just not as forgiving of a person as I thought I was. Apparently not. But I don't know. I would have wanted things to go differently. Like I said, I would have been fine if they did something to Ruri, like besides just taking away her power, like changing some part of her, or like restoring some decency, you know. But no, they didn't want to do that. So I guess I'm just the only one who thinks that way. I'm the only one who feels that. Okay, I am skipping the outro because I want to see if there's anything after this, or if it's just going to take me back to the menu.
そして私は輝けるものと出会った。
Well, that's nice. I'm glad to hear Narita like have more of an upbeat tone about something. I feel like he did deserve happiness. Like, he's been trying to get it this whole time, and through the routes he kind of did, for sure. He definitely had some happiness. But I'm glad like he had his dream fulfilled. Or his oath, I guess. Oh, frick. Oh, interesting. So the whole like title screen changed. Now it's this like Earth looking thing. It looks like we're on Mars or something. Very interesting. Okay. But yeah, I mean, that was Saku's route, guys. We did it. We're now going to be doing new division, which is going to be Mitori's route, which is going to be awesome. And then Hishia's too. I think it's actually Hishia first and then Mitori. Sorry, I did that out of order. And then we're going to do Superior Entelechia. Okay, we're just going to say that's good. That is going to be the true ending. I have no idea how that's going to change the story. What would they do differently? Because I felt like that ending with Saku was the true ending. I feel like that was good. I was obviously I have things I didn't like about it, but I'm like, if you're going to end it, that's the way to end it, right? So we're going to play through those next. That'll be fun. Very fun. This route was long, so hopefully those will be a little bit shorter and a little bit more to the point. I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much information. Hopefully we've gotten all that information out of the way. I really want to learn more about Mitori, and then obviously I want to learn a lot more about Hishia, because obviously they've hinted at Hishia was saved essentially by Narita in some way. So I want to find out more about that. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. That was technically technically the end, but kind of not. I will be playing through the next 3 routes that we have to do, and those should be shorter, so that'll be good. Anyways, guys, I'll see you next time.